Yo, is the music not good or is it very quiet? Oh, you might not have been able to hear it. That's a really low one. Okay, well, here we are. It's a yeah. The thought, like the Skyrim music is so good. Alrighty. I think I forgot to close the door. Fuck, I snack a hoity day. Alright, here we go. Right. We are ready now, I think. Bam. We're just gonna get started. I don't think we need anything like... just need a haircut, holy shit. Maybe I'll do it in the weekend. Let's go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh,
Welcome, everybody. I am joined here today by Jonathan Rogers, director on Path of Exile 2. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. I mean, you know, it's always good to talk to you. We've done a number of these interviews, and I honestly, I'm always happy just to just
Who's
talk
the guy in the left-hand corner? He's irrelevant.
For me, honestly.
Yeah, I've tried to do just that. So I've sent Jonathan some of the questions ahead of time just so he could prepare. We could have a little bit less dev check. And yeah, I've tried really hard to not have any repeat questions except for a few that I really want to push back a little bit on and talk a little bit about.
Sure.
But yeah, it was honestly, it's been so many things that's been changing. So while like making questions with chat, it's been a little bit like, have they answered this? So like it's yeah, but very excited for this. So I want to start with
I like the odds.
An interesting question for me personally, because PoE 2 is so different than PoE 1. And I don't know how familiar you are with World of Warcraft, but a big event there for me was the Gates of Ahn'Qiraj opening with like basically the server coming together and working on something and that affecting like a little bit of the future outcome. So have you ever thought of doing a league like that where the future of the league or how it goes core depends on how us as players perform during the league? As a quick example, like maybe we lose the war towards Breach or we win the war and that like changes the future league.
It's something interesting. I feel like we did something like this before, but I'm trying to remember which thing it was. Wasn't it like Tempest, actually? Like, I feel like Tempest had a mechanic like this, but maybe it was like really not obvious. Like, it's actually the kind of thing I am interested in doing. We just haven't really kind of ended up with a league design that kind of wanted to do it. Because you have to be really careful with that stuff that you don't, like, it can be frustrating for players just because, okay, probably not the thing you're referring to, because that's the whole like coming together and actually like towards a single goal over the long term. But we've had a few mechanics where playing the league affected before, and I think Tempest was one of them. Where like I think it was that one where the more people who farmed something, after a certain number of people had farmed it, it actually the mechanic moved us to another location.
Oh, that's cool too.
And yeah. So that was kind of interesting. But like I think that we sort of decided for that particular case that we weren't like that happy with it, because I kind of had this thing of like, you know, the idea of unfairness of like, you know, oh, you have to like, someone says like, oh, this happened in the middle of the night, you need to wake up and do this, and so we kind of weren't happy with that. But I mean, the thing you were saying there about the gates, I mean, like that's pretty cool. I just like, I guess you have to be prepared for like both outcomes and then exactly what you're going to do in both cases. Like it needs to actually feel like.
But how the fuck would you do that though? Like, WoW's a MMO, yeah. Like it's all about playing together. I don't feel like Path of Exile or ARPGs in general really do well with this. So what? You'd have all of a sudden you can't do things alone and you have to wait for people to do it for you or with you? Like, what would you do? Fucking throw exalts at something and then once you've opened the door, yay, let's go. Like, what the fuck? Kill enough monsters and then what happens? Like, I feel like one of the things I like most about ARPGs is the fact that I am the master of my own progression, yeah? The goals I set for myself is whatever I decide to and whatever I want to do. Nobody sets them for me. And the way I reach that is through my own freaking power and whatever grinding. Dude, I need to do something about this. It is pissing me off. I don't. I'm not sure how the fuck he'd get that implemented. Like, what the fuck would you? What would that even be? Oh no, that's even worse. Because that's gonna come crashing down soon. Come on. Surely this little band has enough strength in it to hold my hair. I am fucking... I'm taking it off this weekend. I think it's annoying me.
Had a meaningful impact.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be the follow-up league. Like, it could be something that you do
Right.
half a year later or something. Like, say you say that we have to kill like 6 billion monsters, and if we don't, like, the league will be different.
Right.
But yeah.
I guess I'm also kind of into the idea, although maybe people aren't, of like you create like a thing that
Dude, how is that exciting though? Like, that just goes to show he has some sort of like nostalgia thing about the gates of Ankh-Morpork. And then he's like, well, maybe if we kill 6 billion monsters, we'll get a different league. One, how is that going to change the league? Like, how is that going to meaningfully and in an exciting way lead into progress for the next league? That you kill 6 billion monsters? Like, what, you want them to like send an army at us, and if we eradicate the army, then what? They have no army. How are you gonna meaningfully tie that into the next league? And it's such a like, oh, kill 6 billion monsters, dude. What the fuck? You're a D4 dev, or like, talk about lowering the bar. Yeah. Oh, kill a lot of monsters, then something happens. Like, okay, like, that's not interesting. The fuck, bro.
Once you've achieved it, unlock something for all players. Like that kind of stuff could be potentially fun. So I mean, there's stuff you could do there, but
Yeah.
I don't have any plans for it in particular. Like I haven't actually thought too much about this kind of stuff. But yeah, like I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I'll keep it in mind when we're doing the next league design for sure.
Nice. Cool. So I have a few questions about stash tabs. The first one is for things that don't have a PoE2 equivalent, like let's say Blight, right? Are we just not getting a tab at all, or are we going to instead get like a regular premium tab or something like that?
Yeah, so currently you don't get anything, and basically that's because we still want to be able to potentially add that content later, and then at that point that tab will be, for that league. So if we gave you something now, then we'd have to like, I guess, read only the other. If we gave you a bonus tab now, we'd have to like give you a read only one or something like that. And effectively, the main thing is that we're trying to just make it so that where it makes sense, the thing you bought before will work. I think that for the particular one you mentioned there,
Yeah.
I suspect that in the future there'll be a time when that will work again, and so you're kind of going to be good in that regard.
Okay.
But I guess it might be like, it is worth bringing up though that if we get to the point of like literally we're never going to use this ever in PoE2, I suppose we could consider like having a replacement tab for something like that. But at least.
It seems kind of easy to just give us a fucking quad tab. If we have something that's not being used when it releases, or within, like, they haven't literally planned for, just give us a quad tab. And then if you add it back, then just fucking let us have an extra quad tab. It's people who's already spent money on it. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't get that. That seems a little stingy, you know? Like, just fucking, here, have a tab. Like, it's gonna make people feel decent about not having spent money on something that doesn't work anymore, despite them saying it'll carry over. And then once the thing finally carries over, people be like, "Oh, I got it for free. Let's go." It's not like they're gonna lose money on it either.
At least for the time being, like we still intend that a lot of that stuff still gets used anyway.
That makes sense. Yeah. Now, the next question is also about stash tabs. And I remember at some point there was a big discussion about consolidating normal tabs and letting people make quad tabs. Now, if I recall correctly, the reason this didn't go through is there was a big issue with like database problems because we already have stuff in remove only tabs, right? Right. PoE2 doesn't have this issue. Is there a chance that we can, like, for example, there's quite a lot of people like me that have 100 normal stash tabs and would like to merge 4 at a time into a quad stash tab. Is that something that could be an option now with PoE2?
Let me think about that. So it's certainly not something that we've done. I suppose we could potentially do that. I have to say that I'm personally not a huge fan of the quad tab overall, just because, like, I understand the like gameplay utility of it, but it's just, I don't know. There's something about it that sucks a little bit to me, of just about the way that it just, you don't really, I feel like you don't appreciate the items the same way. Now, admittedly, if you're just playing the game and you're like, you know, like you don't care about this at all, right? Like, I understand that you don't, and so it's fine. We've got that option. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I've kind of never really loved about it. Like, it kind of makes the items just look a bit lame, but you know, whatever. As I said, I understand that in practice, like for a gamer, it's like you don't care about this. But yeah, like I guess it's one of those. We haven't done this. I guess we theoretically might be able to do that, but yeah, as I said, it's just not something we've done.
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of the quad tabs, and I actually it's funny you brought up Tempest. That's actually where I ended up buying 100 normal tabs, because the radiating Tempest and the 20 Exiles. I was like, and I was new at the time, and you know, when you're new to the game, you don't want to get rid of everything. So the next question is, we've seen on the PoE health bar that there are numbers now, right? So we have basically.
I feel like when Sis does this, he has these obscure questions based on his own experience that nobody else sort of. It's like, who the fuck has 100 normal stash tabs? Like, is that a general problem among veterans? Like, do you have hundreds of normal stash tab? Like, I don't.
The damage numbers in the game. So I wanted to bring up, have you thought about letting us have a literal target dummy?
Please.
Okay, so we've thought about this for sure. The concern that came up the moment we discussed the target dummy is, okay, what resistances does it have? What, like, you know, like what like all this kind of stuff. Like basically they'd have to be stateful. Like, how much armor does it have? How much evasion does it have? Like, all these things. And so then we started getting into, okay, like, you'd have to have some way to set these values, right? You'd have to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to set up a target dummy with this particular amount of armor or whatever to simulate whatever boss it was. And then we're kind of like, okay, should we then have a thing where you can like select, like, okay, here's a boss that it's going to be equivalent to, and then like that would be how we could to do stuff like this. And then we're kind of like, well, hang on, at some point you just got the actual boss itself, you might as well just use that. And then we're kind of like, well, like maybe the target dummy kind of then is like not kind of like, it starts to lose its utility then, you know. So the whole chain of reasoning kind of came from all of that stuff. Like, I do understand like where you're coming from though, if you're saying that's not good enough. But
I think you're overcomplicating it a little.
Yeah. Right. So you reckon target dummy with no stats, and then you're good?
Literally a target dummy with no stats. Like, and like, if you really like, if you don't want to overcomplicate it, you could even have two, right? One that's the equivalent of like, let's say Shaper, right? Or literally just like one boss and one normal monster. But even if all you give us is a target dummy with no resistances and no nothing, that is like already a lot better, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely like, I'm actually kind of like probably fine with this, but.
Just steal what they have in D4. There's a target dummy, and there's a thing to talk to. You talk to the thing, you get a normal monster. You talk to the thing, no, I want 5 normal monsters. Talk to the thing, no, I want a magic monster. Want a rare monster. Want a unique monster. Want a pinnacle boss. And you just take the baseline. Surely there's a baseline. It's not like you have to be able to have each and every single different boss, because it makes sense they have differences, but it's just like being able to, if you get numbers in the game, right? Being able to actually see your damage against an Uber in PoE 1 with the whatever 75 or 70% damage reduction or whatever, like see how it compares to whatever, and then how it compares to the health bar specifically, that would be nice.
But like, as I said, the main concern was that, so it's funny because like anytime you're discussing a feature like this, there's always all the questions of like, okay, so then what are people going to immediately ask for the moment we add this? And so that's how we end up down the path of like, oh, it's like going to require this or this or this or this, and then all these things, and then that suddenly the feature is killed because of like the feeling of overcomplexity.
You know, you're not really that interested in target dummy? No. But it would be nice to have, right? Like, you're sitting here looking at, okay, I have these 3 support gems. Which one do I pick? How do you figure that out? You're going to fucking POB, right? No, let me just slap it in and go hit it. how much damage do I lose for puppeting the greater projectiles, right? Like, how much less am I gonna hit for? What about this attack speed thing? What about this? Like, just let me see which one gets the biggest number and we're good to go. Boom. Like, that's what it's used. It's less POB and more POE. I don't know. They're overthinking it, right? Yeah. Like, you have a single mob, you have multiple mobs, and then if you want to go all balls to the wall, then you get magic, rare, unique, right? And then a boss. And then I don't know how many levels of boss they have, but a level of boss, right? It's not that complicated. I don't think. You could have two vendors, one that sets the tier, one that sets the mob, right? Like, there you go. Or not vendors, just NPCs, right? Hit one, it's tier 4. Hit another one, it's 5 mobs. Boom, let me see. Like, none of that, like, oh, it needs to have, like, I need to be able to set the resistances. I need to be able to set the armor. I need to be able to set the evasion rating. No. Just... And also just to see if you're hitting shit, right? Like, if I have 90% accuracy, how much am I missing? Like, does this feel doable? I don't know.
So yeah. I guess that's just sort of explain like how that sort of stuff occurs. But yeah, I mean, look, if you're saying it's fine with no with no stats at all, like maybe it's something we could consider doing. Like, I'm not really opposed to it, to be honest.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want it. There is a lot of people that don't as well, but yeah, figured I would bring it up. Right.
I'm just out of interest. So to hear the case for people who don't want it, like what do you think is really the behind that? Because I mean, I've heard this argument from some GG people before, but as far as people in the community, like, what do you reckon is the reason for like no target dummies?
Let's see. I'm seeing so many people say I do want it. Someone said we have POB, don't need dummy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. We have POB, we don't need a dummy. No, let me do it in the game. I don't want to tab out for, like, small shit. Just, the less I have to tab out of the game, the better, I think. I feel like more decisions should be made in the game. Right? Like, and if I could pick between support gems in the game, rather than going to POB, that's a plus for me.
It would feel too competitive.
Right.
Misleading numbers. I'm trying to like pick.
Well, they shouldn't be misleading. So long as the target dummy actually emulates a real monster, the numbers wouldn't be misleading, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then that's the argument, therefore, and then that exact thing there is like, oh, well, that's why you have to have, the ability to simulate a given actual enemy.
Sometimes less.
But how is it hard to simulate an enemy? Surely you have a baseline, right? You just pick the median, right? Like, I get that there's tons of different enemies, right? But just pick the median. Surely they have a median. They must be balancing around. They can't... What do they have? They have like 200 monsters. There is no fucking way that those 200 monsters are all just completely balanced individually randomly, yeah? Like, surely there is... This is the baseline for a monster. This monster is smaller and faster, so it needs to be less tanky. So let's drag that down from the baseline and up the damage, right? Surely they have a baseline. Just run with the baseline. And yeah, all of the mods and all of the things you add to the map and all that, obviously you don't put that in. You just have... You pick something for a normal monster... You pick something for a rare monster, you pick something for a magic monster, you pick something for a unique monster, and you pick something for a boss. And then you have the tiers that scale them, right? Like, there you go. Target dummy fixed.
Info is better. I don't know. It's hard to see, like, reasons for why not.
Yeah, fair enough.
The next topic is gonna be a bit of a longer one and a bit of a discussion. I want to talk about what the current state of portaling out at bosses is, and then talking a little bit about pausing and logging out as well.
Yeah. So basically, so you can't portal out of a boss fight. This was something that we tried for a while to make it so that you could portal out of boss fights, but with timers and stuff like that. But eventually, we're just kind of like, you know what? Why are we even trying to do this? Let's just completely ban it, and then that way we don't have to worry about like all the potential kind of like rules and weird stuff about like, oh, you stand at this location, the boss can't hit you, like random stuff like that. Like it just effectively removed a lot of potential exploits. And I think that probably was just a straight up improvement. There's been actually a few other changes we've made. Like this is something probably people will never notice, but you can no longer swap your gear in the middle of a boss fight either. That's been now disallowed too. And like a few other things like this. Like these are just things that like once again people probably won't normally run into if they're not trying to do some kind of exploit, but effectively like we just want to make sure that like when you're actually in for a boss fight you actually have like a proper experience. Like you have to actually overcome the boss without some kind of weirder forms of cheese that you might otherwise try to do.
So what happens if let's say that a hardcore player goes in, they get 60% through the fight and they realize they can't do this? What happens if they log out and wait until the next day?
So you can always log out, like resurrect a checkpoint effectively, or like log out and just wait for time. So like it's possible to get out of a boss fight, right? Like you're not locked into that forever. So that being the case, like effectively, like if you know that you can't do it, you can get out. And this is sort of an interesting question because I know there are people who are kind of be like, oh, it would be nice if like once you've decided to do something, you're kind of committed to that action. But I just think that we probably didn't want to really go down that path because it would mean that like I feel like that would kind of probably feel a bit bad, I think.
Okay,
and like so the concern then
so just so I'm understanding, so from the first thing you said, I was under the impression that if I go into a boss fight, let's say I'm going to fight the Shaper, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Either the Shaper dies or I die, but then that's not the case.
No, that's not the case. So you can actually like you can bail. That is the case. You can't.
That sounds cooler though, doesn't it? Like either the Shaper die or you do. That's if you are playing hardcore. I feel like that's cooler. That might just be me, and I'm totally biased because I don't play hardcore. But I feel like that's the way it should be for hardcore. Maybe I'm wrong, but
portal, but you can choose to restart at checkpoint or like log out to back. Like if you log out. Okay, so if you just Alt F4, right? What'll happen is when you log back in, you'll be in exactly the same place you were, which is like. But that's more that the feature there is more about like trying to make sure that you don't like lose your place when you're just playing, right? And you disconnect for a reason.
Yeah.
But if you want to choose to leave the fight, you can decide to do that. Like that is okay. And just another thing with that, by the way, is like I believe that the feature where if you lag, that the game gets paused, I believe that did get done, which means that even if you just have like internet lag, the actual server will pause while the lag is happening. So then, regardless of whether you get disconnected or not, you're not going to die during the middle of an internet lag spike. And I believe that it might be like 100 milliseconds or something like that. Is like basically if your client's not responding for that amount of time, then effectively the whole instance just pauses and we'll just wait until you're good before we keep going again. So that's how that works basically. But yes, you can leave.
Yeah. So could you walk me through the difference real quick? So will I have to log out and wait 15 minutes, or will it be hitting escape and then clicking like leave fight?
Yeah, so if you hit escape, there's a button there called respawn at checkpoint, and effectively that will just mean that you can, at any time you can choose to do that. Now, obviously the concern with that, like, and we've actually discussed this quite a lot internally about like, should that be okay? Because there was like a whole discussion with this of like, the fact that there's just a button you can do to press this kind of like would mean that like, it's like even if you see like a slam coming, you'd be able to like push escape and just like push that button before it arrives. And that is the case. But the thing is, if we required you to log out and wait 15 minutes, that would kind of be lame too. Like I don't really want to like. And the counter argument to that one was like, oh, but like that's at least more friction to actually doing this. And it's like, well, yeah, but then do you really want the strategy to be that you have to log out and wait 15 minutes? Like it's just kind of lame. So in the end, we kind of decided to do the more, I guess what I would call player-friendly thing of just like, that option is there for you. You can leave if you want. So effectively, in some sense, I suppose you could say that that's kind of equivalent to the Alt F4 you could do in PoE 1. Yeah. But it's that's kind of where we ended up anyway.
So just to confirm, this does not kill you on hardcore, right? Oh, I lost audio.
Wait, no, it doesn't. Oh, sorry, yeah, it doesn't.
Okay.
But let me just think about this because I feel like I'm just getting a memory suddenly of us talking about that as well.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's I'm pretty sure that that's fine. But because, I feel like I remember.
The concern I would have there of why that would be a bad thing. And I know a lot of people are against logout macro.
Right.
And I actually thought it would be something like a 2-second portal you'd have to cast, and then it would fully reset the fight, and you have to go again.
Right.
The reason personally I'm not a big fan of like having to commit is that you end up over farming so hard to the point where you go in and you know there's a 0% chance of you dying, right?
Right.
Like as a normal shaper for now.
Yeah, that would be why it's
like
not.
if you can die, it's a lot more fun being able to go in before you're ready. So that's awesome. I'm very, very happy with that answer.
I will mention, by the way, that there is a very old league flag. I don't know if it's exposed on the private league interface. It probably isn't, honestly. But there's a very old league flag that actually does enable a timer when you disconnect before you actually get disconnected. So if we wanted to run a league that had that functionality of where like you have to commit to everything when you do it, like because you'll stay in game, we actually could turn on a flag that would allow that. So I don't know if you ever want to run a gauntlet like that sometime, where you actually have to you have to commit to something like that, because it is possible to turn on. Yeah. So that's something we could do.
That'd be perfect. I think that's really good for a gauntlet.
Right.
A quick question as well. In PoE1 we have the 6-second disconnect timer. Is that accounted for with the 100 millisecond lag thing you talked about?
Okay, so effectively the 6-second disconnect timer is still like that is just like after 6 seconds of like you not being in game, then we just terminate the socket and you're gone. But because of the 100 millisecond pause thing existing now, effectively the 6-second thing doesn't like really matter anymore, because it's only important for, like because the instance is frozen anyway. So all that's doing is just making it so that like look, at some point we have to give up on the fact that you're not going to actually be able to come back again. In theory, we could actually increase that time now, because like there's really no downside to it being that long, or even longer, so that would give longer for the internet to recover. But I mean, I guess we just haven't kind of done one thing or the other. But the thing that's going to matter to you really is just the fact that after 100 milliseconds instances paused, you're not going to die, and how long it takes before we like actually time your whole connection out is kind of not really as relevant anymore.
Awesome. That's super cool. I can't remember in whose interview you were talking about it, but you expressed some interest in racing again, and saying that that's something you considered revisiting now. But obviously you were cognizant of the fact that it's not necessarily what's going to like bring people back or bring revenue to the company, right? And you are a company. So I wanted to suggest, have you thought about having a specific like battle pass maybe, or even one singular item for racing, and telling people, look, if there's interest, we'll bring back things like Descent, etc., based on how much it sells for. Then like the racing community can literally contribute as much or as little and as there is interest.
I think that's pretty interesting. I actually did have another idea like a long time ago, which I don't know, like this is a different idea, but we'll just see. I'm just going to see what you think about it, because we never actually did this, but it was a thing that I was interested in, and that was the idea of like effectively like pay to enter races, where it would be like, you know, like some number of cents to enter a race, and then effectively, I mean, it's sort of similar to the thing that you were talking about there, I guess, except that instead of being for a whole season, it was just like individual races. And that was kind of an interesting idea that I was thinking that maybe people would be interested in, but I wasn't quite sure whether the community would like that or not. Like it kind of wasn't clear to me, and so we're thinking like, oh, like 5 points to enter a race, and then because of the fact that the rewards. So then effectively the rewards of the race would have to be like cosmetics, right? Because obviously we can't give you rewards in the form of anything that would be player power, given that you need to pay MTX currency to enter. But effectively the original race rewards were alt art uniques anyway, and like effectively if we remove the actual part where you get the actual unique out of it, in theory we could do like skins and stuff like that as part of the rewards. So we kind of discussed that, but I wasn't like whether I was just like very uncertain about whether the community would like hate this. So I'm kind of curious to hear your idea about what you think about it. I mean, the battle pass is similar, except that it's more of a like one-time purchase for a whole season, I assume.
Yeah, it's also I was thinking more of like even if it starts out with like a cloak that you buy that isn't like this wouldn't depend on you being able to play or not. This is like if you want to see more of this in the future. I'm more of a fan of free entry and then having a way for people to support, and just being open with like if this is something you guys are interested in, this is how you can show that you're interested in it. If not,
Well, the battle thing is sort of interesting because it already kind of is similar to how the racing structure was anyway. Where you get points, and then like at certain thresholds, you get, you get.
I don't know anything about
so
what
it actually
they're
probably
talking
does
about.
match more into it. I just mentioned the other one because it's something I thought of ages ago. Thought it would be interesting to see. But that is an interesting idea. Like the racing battle, it's actually a pretty cool idea. Like I'm interested in this for sure.
Cool.
The main issue really with that is just that the amount of bandwidth we have for making microtransactions, which is what we need to make for this, is honestly surprisingly low. Like it's so ridiculous in some ways that like for a company that makes money from cosmetics, that we don't have more people just working on that stuff.
Yeah.
We effectively need more people to be able to create more stuff like that, and it's like to already get more people for making existing cosmetics. So I guess if we had infinite resources to make that stuff, I would absolutely do something like that. I think that's pretty interesting. So it's just a question of where we get the time.
Yeah, that's fair. Awesome. It's just I'm such a big fan of racing, and I know a lot of people are, so
right.
wanted to bring that up.
It is cool.
Why don't they just fucking, if they want to do that racing stuff, just award them with the microtransaction points, and you can buy whatever you want, right? Like, if he wants to do the whole like, yeah, you pay 5 microtransactions or whatever to enter, and then maybe you win 500, like depending on how many wants to enter, right? Like, there you go, you have a racing structure. They don't have to make specific cosmetics for the race. You have fucking PoE fun bucks. You could just use those, yeah? There's plenty of cosmetics to buy with those.
I have a question from a community member in full caps lock. How do character names work? Is it the same as PoE1, or is it #1254, where multiple people can be the same name? So obviously, like, our accounts are hashtag now. Are our names still unique?
So we decided to just keep the names the same way they worked before in PoE1, for now at least. And the reason why is because, so with account names, you never really have to refer to account names very much while actually typing.
Yeah.
So that we wouldn't have had to worry about all the concerns that come around having to like know people's discriminators and having to worry about all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
With character names, there's a few other details. So one of them is that they expire. So you don't have the problem where the space just exists. I assume you knew that about character name expiration. Because
I thought that was just done in waves.
It's not done in waves. So effectively, 1 year after the character name after the character has not been logged into, it goes into a pool of names that someone else could create if they want to, and if they then do that, then the name gets expired for you. So effectively, over time, names will free up again. So that's the way that works. It's actually just as I said, it's just as soon as you haven't logged into a character for a year, that's when
a character or the account?
The character.
Wow. Okay.
So I believe that's how it. At least I think so. It's been a little while since I thought about this, but I'm pretty sure that's the way that one works. And so because of that, characters don't have quite exactly the same problem as account names do. And as I said, the character names will be more annoying because that's kind of how that's kind of how you refer to people within the league. So we kind of decided to do that. That being said, if it became like a real problem, I'm open to the idea of doing the whole discriminator on character name thing. It's just that it would mean that you'd have to then have a situation where it's like whenever you're doing a whisper, you'd have to know, because you have to have autocomplete for this, right? You can't have discriminate autocomplete, and then that means you have to have the whole thing of okay, are they in your friends list, are they in the guild, are they in your party, have they talked in chat recently, have they whispered you recently, all of that stuff would have to go in the pool of things that you autocomplete for. And look, it's like how Discord used to be, right, when it had stuff. So there's basically just a bunch of work that you'd have to do there, and we could do that stuff if we felt like we needed to, but
Congrats, Matt. So I kind of like in D4 that you can just pick whatever name you want. There was a name that I wanted in PoE1, and somebody had taken it. And I'm assuming it was years ago or whatever. So that's... But I guess if they free up after a year, it's a little weird for something where you're mainly playing alone. But then again, if there was a few leaderboard things, right? Whoever got somewhere first got their name shown. Whoever reached a certain level first got their name shown, right? Whoever delves the deepest. Obviously, on your absolute worst pull, rip. I can't remember which name is what I wanted. It doesn't matter.
So we're going to try without for the time being,
Cool.
and see how that goes. And like if it's like a real problem, then we can always change it.
There are some audio issues, by the way. I don't know if the mic's too far away or something, but you're cutting out a little bit.
I'll try that. Hopefully that. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what to do about it.
It's not too bad. It's just a lot of people are commenting on it.
Fair enough.
Awesome. So another question with that are, like, for example, I have the name Zizarin right now in PoE 1.
Mm-hmm.
Will I have that in PoE 2, or is it like fresh start from everyone and there will be a character in PoE 1 and a character in PoE 2?
Yeah, so the characters are separated in PoE 1 and 2. The databases are just completely independent.
Oh,
so you'll have to race to get that one, I guess.
All right, I'm not getting that one. Cool.
Rip.
So, a few other questions about runes.
Dude, that is the worst. Like, the fact that people can just steal each other's names is so fucking ass. Like, bro. I mean, I guess it's just people being assholes, but that is the worst. Like, fucking all the big streamers just losing their freaking names because somebody's like, hey, maybe I can make them pay me for it. Fuck you.
So, runes, they're obviously, like, replacing the crafting bench. And,
I need to go get some water.
In a way.
I can still hear them.
And, can you override them? Like, can I put in a new one over it if I want to change later?
You can't. So that's something that I guess we could potentially do, though. Like, I don't think I'm against it. I'd actually have to talk to Rishi and Mark about whether or not we'd want to allow that. But currently, you can't, at least.
So, yeah, I'm very curious about this because, from my understanding, one of the main reasons that you wanted to remove sockets from gear was that you really wanted to have this new thing where you find a gear upgrade, you don't need to 6-sync it, you don't need to, like, get it exactly how you need it to be, you can just equip it. But I feel like, I actually love the concept of runes, but I feel like a little bit about how they systematically work sort of ends up canceling this, right? Where I will not be able to actually pick up an item and, wow, this is an upgrade. I will have to fix my runes. Maybe I have to farm them.
I see what.
But you can't join runes out? That sounds ass. What, really? So you get a good rune, and you put it in your gear, and then you have to farm or make a new one? If you get an upgrade? That sounds garbage.
What you mean, but I don't think it's the same, because the thing with so a couple of things with this. One of them is that when we're talking about the whole, like, picking up an item and having to change stuff, what that was mostly around is the idea that, okay, like socket colors and so on, right? Like, it meant that you had to change, like, either you have to chromatic stuff until the point where, like, you've actually got exactly what you had before, or you have, which is, like, definitely way more annoying than having to just use a couple of currency items on your on your item, right? Like chromaticking to get to the right state, like, could be very difficult. But or the other thing you might have to do is to just rearrange everything in your character and, like, oh, this goes here, that goes there. I use different supports or something like that, right? So to me, that was like a much more arduous process than what this is, because effectively you're going to have the currency that allows you to add sockets to items. It's not hard to get that currency. Like, in the early game, it's a little bit more restricted, but effectively you're definitely going to buy, as you go through the game, you're going to have that currency in abundance, I would say. So I don't think it's, like, necessarily a problem, like, doing that. But sorry, I felt like you were about to say something there.
Yeah, so especially with resistances and stuff, I'm still a little bit worried about this because you don't have the ability to change that later.
So effectively, in terms of fixing resistances, the sockets are more of a thing that you would be worried about early game for those kinds of stats. When I say early game, I kind of mean, like, during the campaign, right? Because during the campaign, you're like, okay, I've got low on this resistance. I want to get another one of those. To me, at least, I've found that it's kind of not something that I'm too worried about overall, like as I'm changing items going up, because as you're going through the campaign, you're finding new base types, you're getting new things, you're kind of constantly upgrading, and it kind of hasn't really ended up being a thing where I'm worried about that. If you equip a new item and you're like, I lack this resistance, generally speaking, I'll like, oh, okay, well, I'll add another socket or two to this, and then I'll get the resistance rune out of my stash and use that. So it's kind of ended up being a thing where like just fixing that resistance tends to be a problem that you do after deciding to upgrade anyway. So that's kind of been okay. And it's worth mentioning that with the runes, because they're kind of like, so at early game, they're more powerful than they are at late game because the values, there's only one value of each for each type.
Yeah.
So that means is that like early game, the resistances you're getting from one of these resistance runes is like extremely huge relative to the other resistance sources you would get. But as you get later into the game, the runes are less effective at solving that problem because the numbers are not stacking up compared to the mods you could get. And so as you get towards the later game, the things that you're going to be wanting to be socketing are more of the soul cores, which have the like different mods that aren't kind of designed to fix those early game problems. And also your character has more mods overall and is generally kind of like more in a good place. So it really is like, in terms of like fixing problems you have, it's more of a like, you know, first sort of 30, 40 levels kind of type deal rather than after that, if you know what I mean. So I think for that purpose, they work really, really well. As for changing them, I suppose we could allow it. I don't actually see a reason why we couldn't do that, although as I said, I haven't talked to Mark and Rishi about it. But I guess the feeling here is that because you got to choose it, it's not quite the same as feeling like you need to be able to remove the mod that you would have from one of the random sources where we have like some random ways to get rid of it. So that was kind of the reason why we're thinking that it can go the way that it has. But as I said, I don't think there's necessarily a downside to allowing you to replace it. So maybe that is fine. I just haven't thought all through all the repercussions of that yet.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like I normally play SSF. Well, I actually have been playing a little bit more trade lately, and especially for trade, right? You could see like a perfect item you want to buy of somebody, but they've like got these like garbage runes in it. So I could see that being an issue as well. It's definitely like I'm trying to go into PoE too with the approach like, well, I haven't played it enough. I'll see how it is. But that is definitely something I'm very worried about, and hopefully something you'd be open to feedback with when we actually try it.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely always open to the feedback of that.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think from actually trying it myself, that hasn't been a problem I've run into particularly. But, you know, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. That's fair.
Dude, that sounds ass. So if you get so not runes, but soul cores, right? So if you get a really fucking strong soul core, like but you have like a sort of a meh item, then you can't use it. Because you can't take it out and put it into something else. So you have to save that one and run with something shit until you finally find that god tier item that fits the god tier soul core or whatever. And that sounds, unless the soul cores are relatively abundant, that sounds ass. You'd imagine, right? I'm just thinking rune words, right? And rune words are so fucking simple. They're the same every time, and I feel like the soul cores are not. They're either crafted. I'm thinking they are either crafted, or they have to roll well or something, right? And you have to find a new one every time, bro. If I just had to find a new fucking rune every time, that would piss me off. And they don't roll anything. It's just a matter of finding it. God damn.
How rare are like the
here we go.
How rare are the rarest runes, basically?
So the runes themselves are not particularly rare. You get them fairly often. Like, I mean, you'll get, in Act 1, you'll find 4 or 5 of them probably, and then it only increases from there as you get more monster density and so on. So like you're finding them, and generally speaking, like if you're in Act 2, like maybe there'll be a rune that you want that you don't have, but then by the time you're in Act 3, I would say you probably have the runes that you need. Like they're generally available. It's really the soul cores that are the ones that are like the, you know, it's actually a struggle to find the ones you need of these, like because that's where the kind of the higher level gameplay is.
Right. And would you say there are soul cores that are at the rarity of like Eternal Orb, Divine Orb, like that type of stuff?
I don't know the actual numbers, but I would definitely think so. Like, there's definitely there are definitely hard to find ones for sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That sounds ass.
Yeah. Awesome.
But it sounds like they're specific.
Up, how does like stacking ailment works for like stacking multiple of the same?
Right. So effectively, so in general, ailments don't stack, right? In order to get the ability to stack them, there has to be some kind of mechanic you're getting
Yep.
Usually that mechanic will have some kind of like that mechanic may have some kind of explanation for like any specific details you have to be aware of. But I guess the main thing to understand is that if you're doing something like stacking poison, the way that works is that all of the poisons that you do will always be on the monster.
Yeah.
And they're all running. But whatever, if you've got the ability to stack 2 poisons, then whatever the 2 largest poisons that you currently have that are on there, those will be the active ones. And then when one of those falls off, then the next largest will take its place effectively. So that kind of means that like that's kind of, I believe, sort of generally how the like buffs work in PoE, where you've got like, you know, whatever if you can have multiple buffs on a thing, but only one of them is active at a time. So in the case where you're allowed to have more than one, it's just effectively whatever the highest N buffs are that are on the character, that's the ones that you get effectively.
Cool. Well, that's good.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to know about that, but
yeah. No, not that I can think of. I think that answers that. That's really good.
Sure, fair enough.
Another question from the community: does mana and elemental leech exist?
So mana leech is a thing, but only for attacks.
Yeah.
And elemental leech, I believe, is a thing. There are probably. I believe there are probably like various mechanics around that will give you elemental leech.
Okay.
It's definitely going to be a lot harder. But what we're trying to avoid is mana leech for spells. Because that can kind of like defeat a lot of mechanics and so on. So effectively, that's the main thing. Everything else is fair game, but we just have to, you know, like.
What is elemental leech? Is it leech for elemental damage for life? What is elemental leech?
It just depends on where it comes from. So yeah, that's kind of the basic idea.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I know a lot of people are hoping for a spell mana leech, so it's,
that's the
broken
thing we
some
don't want to
hearts.
do.
Yeah.
You're gonna have
Okay,
to
next up, questions about- a
be
few
the
questions
specific
about crit,
ascendancy. What is it?
actually.
Chayula monk.
In PoE 1, it's
No, wait, that has to be attacks.
it's almost like when you're building a crit build, you're supposed to be
Was it?
100% crit. Is that the same
Right,
in
right,
PoE 2?
I would say that it's kind of more like earlier PoE 1, how it used to be, where it's like you can get there with various mechanics, but I would say that it's like it may not be the most optimal thing to do, just because like for you, the stuff you're sacrificing might be too much in order to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got like conditional crit mechanics, getting to 100% isn't so bad, but like you're not always going to be meeting those conditions, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I would say that like we've tried to kind of keep things a little bit more in line in terms of having more like. As I said, just like the controlling the sources a little bit better and kind of making sure that like getting to 100% is actually like a real, like, as I said, possible, but kind of not expected. So I imagine the sort of expected crit would be a bit lower than that. And yeah, trying to increase beyond that is kind of not hugely valuable.
Okay. What's the main reason they're indifference? Is that just to like retain player power and not let it get out of control early?
I wouldn't say that exactly. I think it's more just that like ideally every mechanic. So like I'm just I am generally in favor of the idea that like there's the decision to not increase something more is not because you run out of sources of it, but because like there's like a reason that you don't want to do that because what the trade-offs are too much. And so effectively by keeping the values that you're kind of like can easily get to a sort of certain midpoint, you just avoid this, like you just sort of make it so you get that trade-off, like you have to make that trade-off towards the end of the range. So it's effectively like that. I think that's kind of really the main reason. Like it's been a little while since I talked about this with anyone, but yeah, like that's kind of really what it came down to. We just kind of wanted to make 100% crit more of a like this is a very unusual situation rather than this is a common situation.
Okay. And do you think part of that is as well that, at least in PoE 1, crit feels like the end game? Like, you should go crit at some point, and you kind of want to avoid that as well? Is that part of it at all, or...?
Well, we're certainly trying to make it so that crit is not the only build. There was actually a thing that we changed. So, you know, so here's a random thing for you. We actually had the change for a little while where so crit modifiers, and I need to get this correct. Like there are various crit suffixes in PoE 1, and so there was this feeling that in PoE 1 that if you're a crit build, you've got like you can make your build more powerful than what non-crit builds can because the suffixes that are available to you as a crit build are like more powerful than what the suffixes are available to you as a not crit build.
Yeah.
So because of that, we actually decided initially to move crit stuff all to be prefixes as well to effectively compete with the other prefixes that you could get that all increase damage, right?
Yeah.
And so we did this for a while, and we actually found that like it actually made weapon rolling way less fun. Like in theory, what it was doing was making it so that okay, you could get a crit weapon or you could get like a not crit weapon, and like they were kind of competing with each other. And like we did all the math, and we're like, hey, look, now we've made it so that crit builds and non-crit builds are more in line with each other, and they have the same level of power and items and so on. And we kind of thought that we'd done a good thing there. And then at some point, we just realized like, why is it the weapons just don't feel as fun to find in PoE 2 as they do in PoE 1? And then we realized that like this is actually part of the problem. So we actually reversed that decision and moved the crit stuff back to be suffixes again. And we've kind of tried to make sure that the suffix pool is actually reasonable in other ways for the other builds, like making sure that the suffixes are actually like make sense and there's powerful versions of like ideally it's like there should be there should be a level that each suffix can get to that is exciting, right? Like, and so like the question we have to ask ourselves is like, what is an amount of strength that if you got that on a as a suffix that you'd be excited about that?
Yeah.
And so effectively like we're trying to make sure that there's actually like at the high end there are suffixes that are actually really good. And so hopefully we've restored some of the like possible power that you sort of can get from weapons, and I think that's sort of like as I said, I think it's in a better place. I don't really remember exactly how this was related to the original question anymore, but it was just something that came up in my mind.
Does that mean that at the high end, you don't want dead suffixes? Like I remember life regen for a long time, and thorns, right, would be literally dead suffixes.
You still want to have suffixes where when you get them, you you need to have bad rolls, right? But at the same time, we did say that like okay, whatever when you've got the higher tier rolls, that there are actually things that like that the highest tier of something needs to be something you actually would be excited to see. And there are actually a couple of cases where so we the tiering system for mods, so for rares, like you know how when you've got like T2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5 just goes up to 5, like T5 rares. When you actually if you actually get a T5 rare, it's actually possible because we haven't got some of the mods like light radius, for example. They don't actually have an eye level. There's no light radius mod that's higher than eye level like 60 something, I think it is. It's probably like the highest one. It's actually possible that on the highest tier content with a tier 5 rare that the dead mods like that are actually cut out of the mod pool completely. So it's actually possible that for that to be the case. Now, tier 5 rares are like rare as hen's teeth, right? They're actually like incredibly rare. So when you get one of those, like the mods on those are going to be really, really good because like that the eye level of the mods you're going to get is like higher than a certain amount. I'm so excited
for that.
Yeah, so do you feel like tier 5 are going to end up the only thing you look at later on? For sure. Like you're going to assemble a full whatever of tier 4s and then you're just going to go tier 5 hunting, right? Like by the sound of it.
Okay, so like that means that there are just like really some really good stuff up there. But it's once again, can't remember where I was going with this, but this is like a thing that exists for the rare system. So the that can mean that some of the rares you can get at on the higher tiers can be very good.
Awesome, very, very cool. I'm very excited to hear that. Like items is like my favorite thing in ARPGs, so definitely looking forward to that. I want to continue asking about crit. Enemy crit in Path of Exile 1 can be a little bit weird with especially like let's say multi like the Valspark from like Tynvin or whatever he's called, or the Shaper Balls and stuff, because either the entire ability crits or none of it crits. Is enemy crit functioning similar in PoE 2, or is it to the individual projectile?
So I don't think we've made any changes here, but I believe that the way that works is determinable by the designers as they're working on it. But I suspect it's one of those things that they probably don't necessarily always think about because it's kind of it's sort of somewhat invisible, so it's one of those things that just doesn't come up in their minds. So we can control that, and I don't know whether or not, and as I said, the system works fundamentally the same as PoE 1 did. I just don't know to what extent they've actually like used the features that allow them to control one or the other, and what situations that they would want to use one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, out of interest, do you prefer the like every mechanic crits, or do you prefer just every projectile? I assume every projectile is what you'd prefer.
I'd way prefer every projectile. Obviously, now I usually will end up building for crit immunity instead, and that's fine.
Right.
But I remember when I was a new player to Path of Exile, and suddenly I'd be standing next to the Valspark Exile, and it would just explode, and I'm like, what just happened? And somebody would like watch my clip, and they're like, oh yeah, he crit you, you're gone.
Right. I have a feeling that I mean, I suppose the question would be whether we should make per projectile the default option. It's one of those things that like I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. I'd have to talk to Mark about it, but yeah, that's probably reasonable. I think that I think that the whole ability critting all at once is the default for some reason.
Yeah.
I think. So I'm pretty sure that if you run into that, it's because the designer forgot to add the stat that makes it so that it's just every projectile to that particular ability. So yeah, that's just kind of one of those random things. But for player skills, it's like one of those things that we really have to think very carefully about. Because there are kind of reasons and not. I mean, like one of the ones that is tricky for this is Rain of Arrows. It's like should every projectile crit or should every projectile not crit? Now, because right now every projectile has its own crit roll, it means that if you use like Sniper's Mark on a monster and then you do Rain of Arrows on that monster, then you're almost guaranteed to crit it at some point just because it hits so many times. And that means that effectively the Sniper's Mark is like using it with Rain of Arrows is just like a complete win because you just incredibly likely to actually trigger that. And so then it's kind of like, well, should we make it instead so that ability is like crit, the whole ability crits or doesn't crit? But then the problem with that is that it just feels super weird. Like there's something odd about the feeling of like I do a critical Rain of Arrows and then you start to think like, should it look different so you can see that the whole Rain of Arrows is critting? Or I don't know. Like, it kind of just has some weird implications. So we kind of decided not to do it in the end, but there is a reason why we have both the abilities to do it.
I mean, the whole point of firing something that shoots out a lot of things would be to... I'm definitely
a lot less concerned about the intricate workings of how player
if you have something that activates crit, it would be the Rolden crit, right? And you had a better chance. No?
Yeah. No, it's a tricky one. Definitely would be a fun...
Well, I mean, look, I would be interested. I should talk to Mark about whether or not we should just have a policy in general of just everything a monster does is always individual rolls. Like, there might be a reason he's against that, but I'd be interested to find out.
I'm curious how you feel about bosses, especially critting at all. Personally, I'm a big fan of like everything being static, right? And like not having mods and not being necessarily variable, because like there's some abilities that like, you know, you're basically effectively mathing out what you can tank, and then suddenly you get unlucky with a big crit, and you're like, oh, never mind. So yeah, I'm just curious how you feel about that, like mods and crits on bosses.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, well, okay, so mods. I think it's nice to have mods personally. I think because I like to have situations where you've got the ability to
on bosses.
Like, it gives us an access to, because what having mods does, like on maps and so on, is the ability to make it so that a boss fight can feel different from a different time you fought it, just based on what the mods were. So I think that stuff's important. That being said, we did like the idea of having the static bosses for the top pinnacle content, just because that is a measuring stick that players can use against each other. So having that be like a static thing is kind of nice. Okay. So that's why I like the mods. As for the crits, I can see your point for sure. Like that is an interesting point. Like, should we crit at all for bosses?
As long as this is not arch nemesis.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I guess I just don't really have like I honestly don't really have an argument for why they should.
Map mods,
I guess
but they don't have the
mod just to make sure we've got a variance. But then the answer would be why the players probably don't want the variance. So you know, yeah, I don't know. I find that to be interesting. It's not something that I've really thought about too much, I have to admit.
I mean, the reason to make a boss crit is so that you can't just math out what you can survive, right? So that you should be avoiding everything. So you're not just like, yeah, I can tank this beam or whatever, and just it's easy, right? Like that would be the reason to crit, to keep everything dangerous, no? So that you don't just get complacent and face tank everything.
Yeah, like I see your point about not wanting to have the crits for sure. So yeah, it's probably something that I'll have a chat to Mark about.
I was just very, very curious about the answer there, because obviously, like, we can just get crit immunity, but the feeling for me there is it almost makes it mandatory.
Right.
And I feel like in general, whenever something feels mandatory, like remember the cast and damage taken Immortal Cold days and stuff like that, like it usually gets like changed or removed.
Right.
So
I suspect that the answer against this would involve basically like it's another it's an axis of character development that we're removing. Like that's probably the argument that would be made against it. So then the question is, yeah, like, but I agree with you that if something's mandatory, then it's kind of like, you know, maybe why should it necessarily exist? So yeah, I mean,
But it
point
isn't,
taken, right?
though.
Like this
Yeah.
is an interesting one to me, and I'll talk to the guys about it.
Ziggy wrote something really cool that I
It's
like.
only
Let me see
mandatory
I
if
can
you plan
put
to
it down.
face tank stuff, no?
Enemy crits should be conditional buffs you can see to and react to. I think that would be really cool. Like,
Right.
let's say that let's use Shaper Slam as an example, right? That if the Shaper Slam is about to crit, it like changes the animation and becomes maybe a bit slower.
Right.
That would be really
makes sense.
cool. Because that does
Right.
change the fight, but like I love that.
Yeah.
That would be way
Okay,
cooler.
well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay.
It's for me I guess for me the big thing is that like they look exactly the same. You have no idea if it's gonna crit or not.
Yeah. No, I agree. You know, and that's a very good argument. Like, it is a very good point. I'd be interested to hear if Mark has any particular reason against that. Maybe he doesn't. Like, it is a very interesting point.
Yeah. Cool. More questions about monsters. Do they still get charges? And if so, how do they work?
So charges don't have any inherent bonus anymore.
Yeah.
So therefore, monsters don't currently get charges. I suspect it's the kind of thing where we might come up with some interesting thing to use them for in the future. But currently, there's just no reason for them to exist. So they just don't get them.
Cool. A lot of people are curious about support characters and how they fit into Path of Exile 2 for those that want to play with their friends and
for fun.
make OP combos together.
So I would say it's sort of interesting, right? Because what we don't have is the support character in the way that PoE 1 had it, where it was like just a literal kind of AFK. Well, not, you walk around behind them, you don't really do anything. So I would say that, like, for that, like, we still have things like that. Like, you've got scepters and stuff like that that can give people bonuses. But I would say that support characters in PoE 2 are more along the lines of, like, I'm debuffing monsters actively, or I'm doing, like, I'm like setting up things that are that don't need to worry about the damage in order for someone else to take advantage of them. Like these kind of things. So, like, you can make a support character that's going to like ultra slow all the enemies. You can make a support character that will do things like place objects that other people can use, or or for example, like make a character that's like armor breaking lots of monsters so that other people can take advantage of that, things like that. So I'd say that, like, that's kind of the role of that kind of stuff more. But what we don't have is just like, I just reserve everything, and, like, you know, I'm just like an aura, like just a bunch of auras on my character, and that's kind of all I'm doing. So that's the kind of thing that we don't really have in the same way.
Cool. Awesome. I think that generally answers that. Next up, a little bit of a discussion of something that was brought up in a previous podcast. I have in my notes here, talk about respecing ascendancies. I don't know if that's something you've like thought about or talked about more after the podcast with, I believe it was
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to talk more about this. But I mean, look, as I said, it's still on my mind as something that I know players are concerned about. So, like, we will definitely have another conversation about it for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's really anything else to say about it at the moment.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, that's it. I'm obviously very pro respecting ascendancy. So
yeah,
my argument would just be it's a very early place to make a permanent decision.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. On to endgame like mapping and things like that. How much more rewarding should a difficult map mod like, you know, penetration or something like that be compared to chill ground or monster variety?
So I believe that so it's a very different situation in PoE 2 than PoE 1 for this stuff, because the rewards from difficult mods are not necessarily like the rewarding part of the map mods, because we've got the thing with the prefixes are like the rewards mods, and the suffixes are the like bad mods. It means it's kind of separated those two things out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now, there is still a thing where the harder mods have waystone drop rate increases on them, and so I believe, I believe that the harder mods there do affect that, but I don't think that is like quite so much of a big deal compared to how it was in PoE 1, where like the item drops were heavily changed by that stuff. So like, I don't know that, like, as I said, it's a very different situation. Now it's this is one of those things that I'm like, I really hope it works, but I don't know if it will. So I guess we'll sort of have to see. Like, the dynamics of what people choose to roll and how people respond to that are going to be very interesting. Like, yeah, I guess we'll just see how that goes. But what it does mean, at least with the current way the system works, is that it doesn't matter quite so much what the like the numbers we choose for how difficult those things are relative to like the rewards they give, because as I said, the rewards being given are mostly from the prefixes anyway. So yeah, I guess that's kind of related to that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was just curious because somebody brought up the point that I think it was penetration and monster variety had basically the same reward. So I was curious there. So that'll be interesting to see how that changes. What about things like /letter? Is that going to be the same or different?
It's the same for now. Look, we could probably do better with this. Like, you know, it's funny because
what is that?
before
/letter?
/letter was a temporary cheat we added before PoE 1 was released as a temporary thing before we added the ladder screen.
Oh.
and then now when we're releasing PoE 2 and we still haven't implemented the ladder screen. Like, it's kind of absurd how that works.
Jesus.
But yeah, we originally intended to have an in-game ladder screen, and then I guess the website kind of had it, and then we just never got around to actually implementing UI for it. Like, so all I could say is like, okay, it's been 15 years, but we're still intending to make a ladder screen in game one day. So,
all right. So 15 years from now.
Yeah, sure. At some point we'll get around to that.
Cool. Okay, good to know. And in a similar vein, what about would it be possible at
raising to 100?
Yeah,
okay, that's why I don't care.
Like that, like ladder and like making your own tools.
So I'm curious what more you'd want out of the ladder for the API, because effectively I believe that the API we have right now just gives you a full dump of the first, like, I don't remember how many it is. Is it like 10,000 or something people, something like that? There's like some number of people in the ladder that it gives you, and as far as I know, it gives you everything you would need to have. So yeah, what else do you want, right?
Well,
like if you want something else, I can add it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, we can get you a list. So obviously, like I'm
sure.
Yeah, it's a long time since I started computer science, so I don't have a list in front of me. But things I can think of off the top of my head would be boss kills, for example, right? For the events we do, that is one of the biggest things we want.
Like what? Oh, so you want a ladder for when? Oh, you want like a different ladder for when people have killed a boss?
Not necessarily part of the ladder, just like an API we can access for if somebody kills a boss or something. That'd be...
So you mean like, but so like, do you want like how many times they've killed a given boss, or do you want like have they killed the boss at all yet?
Yeah, have they killed the boss at all yet?
I think that we do have support for ladders of when people killed a boss, because like, don't we have that for certain events? I thought we did.
Only for the first person, I believe.
I have a feeling that the way that's implemented internally is there's just effectively the amount of time until you kill the given boss, like as a separate ladder effectively. And then that would mean that like you could effectively dump a ladder of that, of like who was the first person to kill a given boss. So that's something we could probably do like relatively easily. I will say we haven't like thought about this for a long time. So
well, I
like,
can,
it's one of those things.
I can get you like from like the guy who made PoE Racing and stuff, I can get you a list of like API things that would be huge for us. So obviously, I'm very involved in loving and wanting to do events.
Right. As I said, I think we do have actually like boss time, time to kill a specific boss. But I'm pretty sure that what it is that like that had to be specifically implemented for each boss that we wanted to do it. Because I'm pretty sure that the reason why we had that was for like the original race seasons we did, where we sometimes had like different objectives, things like first to kill X boss. So I think it's still lurking around in there somewhere. So we might be able to like resurrect that, and like. It would be pretty cool to have a ladder for like first person to kill the pinnacle encounters in PoE 2 when it comes out, for example. We might be a little bit too close to be able to actually implement something like that, but like it's possible that it's just like a matter of like resurrecting some piece of code that's been sitting there and turning it on. So I'll actually look into that, because that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, is there going to be any form of like yellow text announcements for like first to level, first to new areas and stuff?
Yes, so I think that we have, so the leveling one, I think we only do it every 5 levels, at least for the first while, just because we don't want it to be like super spammy. And for first to enter area, I think that I don't remember exactly how that was going to be. Because there was also some concern. I mean, look, there is definitely going to be stuff like that. But I think that we just wanted to try and reduce the spam a little bit in some cases. Certainly you want like first to reach level, like past level like 65 or something. You probably want like everything above that to be like every single level, I would say. Just because like, you know, that's pretty important race, and it takes a bit longer up there. So we've got stuff like that. I don't think there's any first to kill. Well, maybe there are first to kill bosses for the act bosses or something. I don't remember the exact situation, but there's definitely some of that stuff. We just wanted to make sure it didn't seem like completely incomprehensible for like a bunch of new players who are seeing all the stuff for the first time. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to limit it a little bit.
Very cool. I love to hear that.
I don't want that turned
A
on.
question
for the
from my
first game.
community
Like,
was
for the early access. I wouldn't want that turned on, because then you get like little spoilers, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be like, oh, whatever. What is this fucking the what is it? Shitstain Steve. I don't want to see Shitstain Steve has killed the Undertaker or whatever, right? Like, because then all of a sudden I know, oh, there's gonna be like a fucking Undertaker boss, and I can be like, oh, what is it? Like, begin to think, because the names usually make some sort of sense, right? I don't want that. Don't fucking alert me about that. I don't even want to know what the zones are called, because if I am sitting there playing and somebody's like level 40, I'm level 20, and he's like, he's the first to enter the tropical rainforest. Like, no, I don't want to know that I'm going there. I want to be surprised. Don't fucking. I guess I can. Maybe I can turn that off myself. Can I? I hope I can. Then, if they're doing it for later leagues, it's fine. It's kind of fun, but for the first one, no. I just want to go through.
Are there going to be free respecs during the EA if there's a big enough change? Like right now, if there's a huge skill tree change on standard, you get like the free respec.
Yeah.
Because
So I'd say it's probably going to be the same as that effectively. Like when we do a big change, everyone will get a free respec, and it'll work that way pretty much. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Somebody was particularly concerned because of its respecking. Is it only gold, or do you have silver guy orbs? I can't remember.
No regret anymore. It's just gold.
Yeah. So the guy I was asking was what if a big change happens and your build is bricked and you've just used your gold? You just log in, you're like, ooh.
Cool. Generally speaking, yeah, it'll be that like the big patches that do the big balance stuff, we should get some. Now that being said, like, I'm not going to say that every single like there will probably be patches where we nerf some particular thing, and then like, you know, that could hurt certain characters like that. That'll probably happen.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, that I'm hoping not, but you never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that might then cause a situation where you don't have a free respec for that reason.
Yeah.
Because what we don't have the ability to do is like targetedly respec like certain builds or anything like that. Like so it's effectively all or nothing. So because of that, the like it would have to be a more global change to, like, you know.
Why don't they just give a free respec every time they do a balance patch? And you can use it or not. Like, just optional free respec. That shouldn't be too hard. Like, oh, these things were changed. Would you like a respec? Yes, no. Like, am I off? Like, that seems so pretty super low hanging fruit.
Oh, look, we've redone the skill tree in various ways, and then we'd probably do it.
Yeah.
No, he just said, listen.
Generally speaking, yeah, it'll be that like the big patches that do the big balance stuff, we should get some. Now that being
the big patches that do the balancing stuff, right? But here comes
said, like, I'm not going to say that every single like there will probably be patches where we nerf some particular thing, and then like, you know, that could hurt certain characters like that. That'll probably happen.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, that I'm hoping not, but you never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that might then cause a situation where you don't have a free respec for that reason.
Yeah.
Because what we don't have the ability to do is like targetedly respec like certain builds or anything like that. Like so it's effectively all or nothing.
So just give an optional respec, right? Like, because he's literally saying, yeah, when we nerf Penis Brand and cut it completely down, your character might not work anymore. But if it's only that we're changing, you're not going to get a free respec. So they could just make a little thing. We have nerfed Penis Brand and XYZ. Would you like a respec? And you could say, I'm not playing those things. No, thank you. Or I could say, yes, please.
So because of that, the like it would have to be a more global change to, like, you know, oh, look, we've redone the skill tree in various ways, and then we'd probably do it.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you can't go in negative gold, right? You can't, like, okay, Mr. Respect
No,
Man,
no.
I'll pay you back later.
No.
Yeah, no debt. Cool. Another question from the community is, we've learned that ascendancies and items can be supported. So a logical follow-up is, how many sockets do those start with? Do ascendancy skills starts with 5 sockets, and do items with skills show you how many sockets they have?
So if you have stuff that's inherent to your character, so that is to say, like and ascendancy skills do count as that, or things like so for example, default attack being also a supportable skill. These things get sockets based on your character level. Now, I don't remember what the level is that you get. It's like late 80s. There's like, that's the one where you get 5 sockets for all of those things. But effectively, as you level up, you'll get more sockets for that stuff.
Oh, that's cool as fuck.
But
What about
inherent
items?
to items, those ones get sockets based on the eye level of the item. So effectively, a higher eye level base, if that base comes with a socket, that high level eye level base will have the thing. So I don't know if the trade site will show it correctly yet or not, but it is based entirely on eye level, which you can see. The trade site needs that will probably take some time to fully be like 100% like every single thing about it looking exactly the same as in game, just because there's like a whole bunch of work there. But we definitely want to make sure the trade site at least shows you everything that you sort of need to know. So awesome. I don't know whether or not they will be showing the sockets in that are in skills in gear, and I have a feeling it probably won't, because I know that skills in general on the trade site are kind of like because there's like a ton of work to make them work the same as in game. I think we're just going to be showing like names and levels, so it probably won't show the sockets on the site, but you can know that effectively there's just certain eye levels that the item is that when it does that. And then later on we'll like improve support on the trade site and get everything rendering exactly the same as in game, and then that'll be fine. But there certainly should be nothing on the trade site which you can't know about something that's important for trade, at least, even to start with.
Awesome. Quick follow-up on ascendancy questions that a lot of people have asked me to ask, regardless of the answer. Are we going to have be able to see the full ascendancies before launch?
Yes.
Good question.
They're
don't
already
know whether
live.
that's in the spoiler list or not, actually. What we're not going to have is like support for it on the website, which we were planning on doing because we wanted people to just have all that stuff there. But I think we didn't quite get time to implement all that stuff on the website to get that working. It's possible we could still get them to post the ascendancies early. I'll have to talk to the community team and see whether or not that's planned. We might be able to do that. I'll talk to the community team and see what their plan is for that.
It is pretty much a 50-50, by the way.
On whether or not people want that?
Oh yeah, a lot of people don't want it.
Right.
I think
we did show quite a lot about the ascendancies already, so like in some ways it's just filling out the remaining stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the argument from people that do want it is that since it is like a hard lock thing, they want to have a little bit of info there, and obviously most people really are appreciating that we're going in blind, and that's pretty awesome.
Sure. Fair enough. I'll talk to the community team and see how they feel about it. So we might do it or might
maybe
not.
just throw up a poll and see what more people want. But yeah, another question is low life 50%?
No, it's 35. It's actually back to how it used to. It's back to how it used to be, and the reason is because that was changed up to 50% mostly because of all the reservation related stuff in PoE 1, which is not a concern anymore. So that means low life can be 35 again, and that restores that to how it was before.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was really curious about that. We were trying to figure out what it was.
Oh shit!
Cool. Force move, is that something that can be a keybind instead of taking up a skill slot?
So it works the same way as PoE 1. I guess that the thought with that is just like most people probably want force move on left click anyway, right?
Not necessarily.
I mean, I guess maybe not. I suppose we could change that, but hang on, can't you? Okay, so can't you change because you know the skill binds that are like control W and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Like you can control, you can change those to not be using control, right?
Yes, you can change all your keybinds. The main issue for a lot of people right now is they would like to have in just keybind settings force move to be like whether you put it on mouse button 1 or not. Right now, it's costing you a skill slot, and we're already a little bit for some builds short on that. I
would have thought that when you include the control, like they're more inconvenient, but like the control Q, control W, that kind of stuff, those ones like, are you really using all of those as well? Because I feel like you could just use the like skill slot 10 or whatever the last one is, like at the end there, and then use that one as your force move, and then just rebind it to something that doesn't require precision control. And then if you do that, you should be able to use that. But like, I mean, I guess there's no real reason we couldn't change it to not use a skill slot potentially. But I guess I figure that it's not usually a problem at the moment if you're able to do that.
A lot of people want that for sure.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, look, I'll table it with the UI guys and see if they want to do it then.
Yeah. Also, pretty small sample size, but I polled the people watching on Twitch right now, and 77% are saying they do want to know. I actually thought it would be more people against.
Interesting.
Yeah, so do with that what you will.
Well, that's an interesting data point to have.
Yeah, curious. Right. I would like to hear a little bit more about towers and like buffing the maps and like
sure.
If you can talk about that a little bit, because a bit before.
I think Sis said he polled who wants to know the ascendancies, and I think Jonathan understood that he polled who wants the force move to not be a skill, to take up a skill slot. Just
the vibe I was getting as a player, it's felt a little bit like Synthesis like, where I would be like trying really hard to maximize my area and buffing it up, and that could maybe sound a little tedious. So yeah, I would just love to hear you talk about towers more.
Yeah, so effectively, so you unlock towers. The towers are, there's quite a few around, so you can always like, and the radius is actually quite large. And what that means is that generally speaking, the amount of things that get added, like the amount of breaches, for example, that you add when you use a breach tablet, generally speaking, you're going to be there's more in radius that could receive the breach than the number that, than the number that it's going to be adding.
Okay.
So for that reason, like 'cause I know there was some concern, like there was some concern that we had initially that like, because you have to like run maps to get to the tower in the first place, you're effectively consuming some of the maps you would have been able to use, you know, that would have gotten buffed. And that is true, but because the radius is so large, and because like the number that they'll add, of breaches that might add might be like 6 or something, or 6, 7, something like that. It means that generally speaking, there'll always be more maps in the radius than there will, even ones you haven't run yet, than what you add.
Okay.
In terms of adding them to overlapping stuff, like because there's overlapping towers, you can still get a situation where like you want to try and maximize this.
Yeah.
But and yes, you can only add one, use each tower one time. So effectively, like you want to find the tower, like go to it, add whatever mechanic you're adding, find some nearby towers potentially if there are nearby ones. Use those as well, like add them all, and then once you've done that, you get the overlapping radii for the mods, and then you run them. So effectively works like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you've got any specific questions about it, I can.
So what you wanna do is you want to find a tower. Oh, can this not find that? Come on, OBS, you can do it. But we'll use the small one. Wait, that doesn't show shit, huh? Why does that not work? Huh. Wait, why can you not see the paper? What the hell? Brother. The fuck? Oh my god, now it's installing something. Fuck. Can I just find regular paint? Is that gonna work? MS Paint. That doesn't fucking... What the hell is happening? What is happening to my OBS right now? Jesus. The fuck? Right now I'm messing up everything. This goes away again. Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Okay, well, that doesn't work. God damn it. Well, here I was thinking I'd be smart. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to find a tower. You want to find towers together, and you want to clear everything except the amount of maps that are going to be added buffs to. And then add the buffs so they all go into super juice, I guess. So that you don't have the, oh, I'm juicing these and they don't land. That's going to be something.
Well, can you use towers multiple times?
No, you can't. So just one time each.
Honestly, it's hard because again, I haven't played, which I love. I haven't played. I would just like, do you like it? Like, is it fun? Like, is it something you're confident that you think people will enjoy?
I mean, I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty fun, but it's kind of like, look, it's one of those things we'll just have to see how it works in some ways. Like, cool. What we don't really know is like what the long-term feel of it is. Like when you actually really ramp everything to like max, and with but like what's the steady state like once you've reached the like point of just grinding forever? And that I sort of have a hard time knowing. Like we haven't done like. The amount of time we need to invest to be able to really test that is like more than what we have, so it's kind of hard for us to know that. But the actual, just like when you just play it normally, like it's cool, like it does work well, and I'm enjoying that.
I appreciate the follow.
The hard part, yeah, as I said, the hard part to know will be like once you've got infinite resources and you could just like, you know, you've got as much as will it feel bad then? And I'm not sure about that. Yeah. I'm hoping not though. There are generic tablets as well, by the way, that don't relate to a specific mechanic. And those ones like add more general mods that just sort of affect all maps. So that's another thing as well, just so you know. So we've got that too.
That's very fun.
And I am sure that we're going to be playing around a lot with the mod pools and other things like this, and sort of like, you know, like affecting the juicing experience is definitely something that needs a lot more actual testing to really know like how far that goes and how well it works.
I never really juiced, so I'm sure it's not really going to matter to me. I just ran maps, so it's not really going to change anything for me.
Doing early access, I guess.
Right.
I was yesterday on a podcast called Dropped Frames. And Ko and JP asked Ezekiel to make them a question for today's podcast that I said I would ask them. And Ezekiel asked, why was it a conscious choice to make the game more difficult than PoE 1?
So, see, I guess I don't know that I would say that the conscious choice was to make the game more difficult because that makes it sound like the goal is we're going to make it more difficult. Whereas what the goal was to make the combat more engaging. And on some level that did make the game more difficult, but I wouldn't say that was like, this is what we're setting out to do, if you know what I mean. It's like we're setting out to make the combat good. And to me, at least, good combat involves some level of challenge. And so that's kind of what you end up with. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what that's what it really comes down to. It's just, yeah, like that's just, it's a natural part of that.
Cool.
That sounds good.
I think that's really.
I really hope that they're
engaging combat. That makes sense.
I really hope that they're right about the combat being better. That is one of the things that Diablo 4 has on PoE 1 for me. The combat is better. The dodge roll alone might be a lot of it. And I think the dodge roll in PoE 2 is going to be way better and more useful. Because there'll actually be things to dodge out of. She's like a pretty good streamer. Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, we don't usually do these React things. But PoE is coming out tomorrow and I want to consume some. I want to see if I can get some knowledge starting out. I don't want to consume too much because I want to go in sort of fresh. But it's nice to hear some of the things about how things are going to work and see if they'll address some of the things I think might not be too good.
A cat in the community asked, will every attack from rapid fire give stacks of tailwind?
Jesus.
So it
that
currently
is so
does.
Specific.
I know there was a discussion happening about this. One of the designers was unhappy about it, and so I think that I know there was a discussion recently that I haven't heard the result of about what's going on with that. I actually can't answer what the final state will be because I don't know. It depends on what they went off and did. But there was a discussion about it for sure. It was a balanced concern. That's what I know.
Yeah, I think that's why they were curious. So I've seen a lot of theory crafting and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a few more Reddit questions here. I think we have a few thousand questions from Reddit, so I've just tried calling
Sure, all
down.
good.
This was one I found very interesting, and it's pretty rare to see someone so motivated after doing something for so long. Can you talk about what makes you so motivated?
Oh, I don't care about
I
that.
guess
He's
for me, I just
enjoying
want
it.
to make like I want to actually make a game I'm happy with, and until I've actually done that, I think I won't be happy. You know what I mean? Like I just want to keep going. Like I was never fully happy with PoE 1. There was always more to do. It's always like you know, like it's just we're still not in a good place yet. And yeah,
Jesus.
I want to make that perfect action RPG. So
Perfect, bro.
I'll just keep going until I've achieved that, right? And maybe that's impossible to like make something really truly perfect, but like
It is.
I guess I'm just ultimately motivated to fix things.
Yeah.
Like I want, you know, I just want everything to be perfect, and so you know we keep going until we get to that point, which maybe is impossible.
Hopefully it is.
As far as I know, that's what's driving me really.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's
Dude, if they end up with perfect, then he's not gonna be motivated anymore. Dude, he's spitting fire at the moment, so I hope they fucking still have something for him to fix.
great answer. I mean, it's very this like talking to you as well. It's very fun. So it's great. Keep it up. Next question is does hardcore still go to softcore?
Yes. So
Okay.
it works the same as PoE 1.
So effectively, like I was thinking about actually starting softcore this time, but I could effectively just start playing on hardcore, die, and just continue on softcore then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Yeah, sure. I mean, hopefully that will happen by the time you're like 3 areas in. So
Okay.
but we'll see. But we'll see. We'll see.
Damn. All right. Oh wow. So like, yeah. How hardcore rival do you think it is for your first time?
I think that would be. I think it probably would really not be hardcore viable, just
Yeah.
because there's going to be mechanics on bosses that you're going to need to learn. That being said, look, I mean, you can with enough grinding and like, you know, if you really over prepare for everything, right? You obviously can be very, you know, you can be successful. But
I mean,
yeah,
if
like,
hardcore
if you're playing at a regular
anyways,
pace,
then I might just start hardcore
like,
as
you know,
well, just
bosses
see how
will kill
far
you
we
just
get.
due to like, you know, learn the mechanics. Like there are things that are subtle about them, and you know,
Yeah.
you have to work them out. Or, you know, like obviously, like you've never seen, like everything is very well telegraphed, but like if you don't know what it's telegraphing, you know, like until you've seen the ability one time, you know, what I would say is if you were like playing behind someone and every single boss fight you like watched a video of someone playing it first before you fought it in hardcore,
Yeah.
I think you could probably do it that way. But where's the fun in that, right? Like you want to experience all the stuff the first time yourself. So that I would say you can do. So
Very cool.
yeah, that's I would say play softcore your first time, or at least play hardcore and die, and then play softcore the rest, and you should be all right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that. That could be fun. See how far we get. Will I make it out of Act 1? No. Will I make it out of Area 1? Maybe. I don't have any money to pay you, Freya, so it doesn't matter. Like, I can look at your work, but I don't have any money to pay you for it, so you might as well put your effort somewhere else.
No, I was actually like bouncing between which one I should do, and then it was finally Ben that convinced me that I should play softcore.
Take bets
because
on
of
when you
server
die?
issues.
Exactly.
And I think that obviously that is something we're all concerned about. So
I have a feeling like if there are server issues, it probably won't be that like it's like lag server side on the individual like on an individual instance. It's much more likely to be like back-end problems, which like boot off to, you know, 100,000 people get booted off kind of thing. That's
Right.
kind of like a different type, you know, rather than like a you know, like, oh, it's just crappy performance. I would hope anyway. I mean, you never really know, but like I just have a feeling it was much more likely to be those kinds of problems, like the like horrible back-end issue that I have to get up for at 2 a.m. to work out, rather than the like just slow grind.
yeah, how
But yeah, hopefully we're able to solve that issue.
how confident are you feeling?
Like, it's hard. Apparently, not very. If I'm,
Yeah.
if I'm saying like that, the issue is just like, you know, I really have no idea how many people will turn up on day one. Like we can look at supporter pack sales and we can say like, okay, well, there's at least this number, but on day one, you know, we're not sure. And the other thing as well is that there are things like, what's console going to be like? I just don't know really.
Yeah.
Like how many people will turn up there. It's really hard to say. yeah, it's very hard to feel confidence even though we're doing a bunch of testing and things like that, just because, like, as I said, it's a new game. You never know what's going to happen. Like, launches are just like notorious for like random issues, right? And it's not for lack of people trying to make sure that, like, it's not like we're like, oh, just cheaping out on servers or something like that, right? Like, we will do our best to get as much as we can, but you just never know what kind of a random performance issue can go wrong. And the sucky thing about it is, like, you can make some really subtle mistake somewhere and it results in like a huge amount of chaos for the players, because, like, you go over some weird threshold and you get some deadlock or some random thing happens, and it just everything dies. And so, yeah, that kind of stuff really sucks. I really hope we can do well. I mean, the nice thing is, at least, is that it's all based on PoE1 backend stuff. Like, that's been tested to a pretty reasonable degree by this point.
Yeah.
I think we can do okay. But on the other hand, we may get more players than what our backend has ever dealt with before, and I think it's very, very likely at this point that will happen. So as I said, you can never really know.
I don't know if you're like comfortable sharing a number you're prepared for, but like, are you prepared for like 1 million players, for example? If that's something you're
well, a million is how many is what we're prepared for as far as instance capacity goes.
Okay.
We also are prepared to increase that as well, like in terms of just like talking to cloud vendors and stuff like that about, like, what if we go over this? Like, do we have a plan for how we're going to scale up? Like, that kind of stuff. So 1 million is the capacity that we'll have on day one, like before we know how many people we're going to get. And my hope is that that'll be enough.
Cool.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we'll get it in 1 million. I don't think it's going to go. I think the chance of going above 1 million is pretty low, honestly. But you never know. You never know.
Yeah, you never
They're
know.
prepared for 1 million and he's not confident? Okay, bro.
Just bear in mind, it is paid, right? It's not like okay. Let me say this. On our full release, when it's free, like, I think the numbers will be much higher than 1 million. I think that's going to be very, very high, like absurdly high. But for a paid early access, I think getting to 1 million would be a very good success. Like, that would be crazy. But yet I think that we might be on the way to it for sure.
Yeah.
As I said, 1 million is what we're, because of the fact that we want to make sure we don't screw this up. 1 million is what we're getting for instance capacity. When I say instance, by the way, I'm talking about the actual servers that individual players play on, as opposed to like the back end, which is like where all of the which is the scaling challenge that's much more hard to know.
Cool.
Now, as far as like testing,
I just went to top sellers on Steam. Path of Exile 2 is #1. It doesn't say how many, though. Can you see how many? It's by revenue, though, so I'm not sure if that... Oh, this is in Denmark. Oh, it's global as well. Okay, but it's by revenue. Can I change that in any way? No, well, I mean... There's a lot of people on Steam, I don't know.
Like, testing the backend and making sure it can work. The hard part there is, like, can you simulate player numbers like correctly enough to actually know what's going on? So we've got a synthetic test that goes up to 1.6 million in the back end before it falls over, and we want to try and improve that to 2 million before we launch, just so that we like can be like okay. But the thing is that that's a synthetic test, right? Like, we don't, like, we write a bot that simulates what a player does, but like, what if we're just wrong about that? And like, people, and there's all sorts of numbers that you can play around with, like how often do people change areas, and how often do people, like, how many items do people pick up and not pick up, and like, we don't really know the numbers for that. And we can look at PoE1 and we can kind of assume that they're similar, and we can try and kind of like get things to like some kind of real world situation, but then it'll just be some other random thing we don't even think about that like players end up doing that we just don't even that can cause the issue. So the other thing as well is, like, what if we just didn't like okay, so sure, we wrote it to that many players like as a test, but there could be like even more subtle elements, like here's a random example we did think about, but like just to sort of give you an example of the kind of subtlety that happens here. So we have processes in the backend called instance managers, which like deal with like effectively they just like know where all the instances are, like all the game instances are, and like if they fall over, like if they're keeping track of them effectively. And we've got more than one of these, but like, to know which one to contact, you need to know, like, you need to have something to work out like what what is the thing that that will tell you like which instance manager I should be talking to whenever I'm going to go to a new area? And so that we shard this based on the area the area index. And the thing that we realized recently was that like when everyone plays the game initially, they're all going to be in the same area. They're all going to be starting in what's called G11, which is like the first area of the game. And then a bunch of those people, like there'll be a very similar amount of time that people will take to get from there to the next area. Yeah. And so that means that everyone will go from there to like the next area. And so that means like all the load's going to be on one of these instance managers, and then all the load's going to move to a different instance manager. It's all going to happen at the same time, which means there's actually like the thing with having more of these is like completely defeated by just the way that will happen on launch. And like that's not something that our load test would immediately notice because like we kind of have to think about how the actual players will actually be.
This is the thing where you're like in a zone and you just have to wait until enough people progress out of the zone, kind of thing. Jesus, you either want to be at the very like at the very forefront, or you want to be at the back. You don't want to be in the big middle. It's hailing so hard people can hear it on Discord through your mic. Jesus, do you have to call a lot for what is it? The Coven or whatever they are, the two bosses, right? The ones you're at now, the one with the spider whip into Chargy Boy.
Behaving on release day to be able to see that kind of issue. So like that's one we did think of, but like there could be 200 other things like that we didn't think of that like, you know, could result in problems. And so this is the kind of stuff that like, you know, as I said, that you just never expect on the back end. So this is probably like way too much detail and like I'm being way too
I love the
here,
transparency. It's really great.
But okay, but anyway, as I said, that's the kind of issue. So I'm hoping that whatever it is like really obvious, like whatever problem we do run into is like really obvious to us so we can just fix it. But it's because the part that really sucks is like the thing fell over, like there's no crash, there's no like thing, it's just a bunch of people got disconnected, there's no logs, there's nothing for us to even latch onto it. That's like the really horrible type of issue that I really hope we don't run into. You know, I you never know. We'll see what happens. I'm hoping it will be okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you could just do a surprise launch right now. Then there will be like no one's expecting it. You just
well, there was somehow I don't think that's a good idea. So, I guess what will be really interesting to see is how big do the queues get on. Like yeah, that could be scary. But I think it'll be okay.
I'm excited. I'm very hyped. Awesome. Thank you so much for the transparency there. That was more in depth than I was expecting, and yeah, love it. A question about ExileCon. Are there going to be more ExileCons? Will there be one before or after release? Like, what's the vibe there?
So we were actually originally planning to have one next year, and as it got closer,
I don't care.
We were just like, man, do we really want to? Are we really wanting to be having to deal with another ExileCon this close? Like it's like, you know, we're pretty tired right now.
It's a lot of work.
I don't know if I can actually. It's a lot of work, and it is like a huge amount of work. So we're kind of like, you know what? We're not going to do one in 2025. So we'll think about the year after that. But we were, as I said, we actually originally like had made a booking and everything of like the venue, and we're actually keen. But then when we really looked at it, we were like, I worry that we're going to be like close to like if we're like really close to the release at that point when that would have been scheduled, that could just be really like too much load on our studio all at one time, because running an ExileCon really is like, it is a crazy amount of work for the whole studio. Like it's just a huge amount of stuff. So I am almost certain we'll have another one. I just don't think we're just not gonna have one next year, just because it's gonna be too much going on, I think, for our studio. Because you know, it's really fun to run them, like even though it's all that work, like it is really fun to run them, and like having all the community there, like it's a really fun thing. And like if we had infinite resources, then having ExileCon right before the full release would be like the most amazing marketing opportunity, right? Like that would be great. But then the idea of having to do all of that and also get the release out at the same time, it's just too much. I just don't think we'd be able to do it.
No, that makes sense. It's a lot of work. Question again about bosses. Is every single boss going to be you die once and it's over? Like, you know, you collect 300 Zeshtula splinters or whatever?
Right. So we've actually had quite a lot of conversations about this topic. With the 300 splinters thing, just to, by the way, is like they do come in stacks, so it's not like you have to fight 300 breaches to do that. But this was definitely a question. should we allow more portals for some of these bosses because, like, you know, it's like the first time that you save up, the first time you're going to fight it, and then you just die instantly to some ability, and like, is that okay? And
if I wanted that, I'd play hardcore, man.
But we eventually decided that we are going to leave it as one death for those bosses, just because we just want to make sure that there's integrity in the, you know, like in the boss fight, that you actually did have to kill it from top to bottom. It is one of those things though that, like, if it really was a problem, I guess we could readdress it. But like, I think we're pretty keen to go with just one death, even for those for the time being.
Cool.
But yes,
that makes it less fun for me.
About it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I'm gonna be hardcore hopefully most of the time. So once I figure the game out, so I was just mostly asking for softcore players. I'll be very curious how they feel about it. Cool.
I just think the whole like one death thing. If I wanted that, I'd play hardcore. It's like, what is this middle ground thing? Like, I don't get. I understand there has to be a limit, that you can't just fucking roll into it Diablo 4 style. But it just really sucks that you spend X amount of hours grinding out this boss fight, grinding out the materials, whatever. You think you're ready. You make a fuck up. It's over. Like, that's just it just kind of makes it hardcore, which I've opted out of, right? Like, yeah, I don't lose my character, right? So it's not as bad, but it's still, you're still put into those like situations where it's, you fuck up, you lose the shit. And I just think if I wanted that, I would pick hardcore.
Okay, another question. How do you feel about safe mechanics like Toda? Like, obviously, RuneScape is probably the game that comes to mind, where you can very, very much, more than any game I can think of, tailor exactly what type of content you want to be doing, right? Like, if you want to, you can do completely safe content, or you can focus on like a really hard boss fight where it takes all of your focus. So yeah, what are your thoughts on like being able to tailor your custom content?
So, I mean, I would say that PoE is pretty strong in this regard as well, right? Like, you've got the ability to change the degree to which, like, how many mods you put on maps, and then like how much you're juicing things with mechanics for the towers and like all sorts of stuff like that. So I would say that PoE is one of the games where you do actually have quite a lot of control. So like, you can definitely get, like, look, if you're running a white map, it's not a huge amount that's just going to randomly kill you. If you're powerful enough to deal with that, you should be okay. It really is the other extra difficulty you add that makes it so that you're so that you're more safe. And like, especially now that the bosses have been moved out of the regular map, so that you can choose whether you're doing them or not. Like, you have even that choice as well. So yeah, I'm a fan of tailoring content difficulty, and that is the goal for us as well, right? Just like make sure that you can decide that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, me too. I'm a big fan of that. Very cool. So, talking about playing hardcore and pausing and stuff. So let's say that I've opened an expensive boss fight. It took me a while to farm, and I'm halfway through the fight, and I'm like, oh, this is not going well. This is not going down well. But I don't want to leave either. Can I pause the fight and be like, Steel Mage, I need help right now. Please come get me. And can he then, like, while I'm paused, can he come help me?
So so currently you actually can't like do things like accept invites and everything while you're paused. Now, we actually had planned to allow you to do way more stuff while paused. There was this whole pause rework we were going to do. We were going to change the interface so you can pause the game and still be able to like look at the rest of the interface and like kind of do certain things while paused or not, and then we could just make the decision of like what's allowed when paused and what isn't. But we never got it. We unfortunately didn't get time to do it. So right now, you wouldn't be able to accept a challenge while paused. But that being said, you could like pause the game, message your friend, he sends you an invite, you unpause quickly, click accept, and then pause again, right? Like, it is kind of possible. And so there's kind of really no reason to like not allow you to accept an invite while paused for that reason, because like you can just kind of do that. Like, that would be possible.
Cool.
And ultimately that would mean that you can kind of do that. The question then is, like, can you get to the person in a fight? And that depends on the context. Now, I don't actually know 100% of all the rules about this, about exactly what goes on. I believe that when you sea shelter someone, as the players call it, that it's that you go to the checkpoint of the last you go to the physical location of the most recent checkpoint the player has.
Yeah.
And then from there you can go into the boss fight. So during campaign you can certainly just like get into someone's boss fight very easily.
Yeah.
What I don't know is what the situation is with regard to maps and exactly how that works. So I would have to check on that to work out exactly what you could do there. I am sure there's going to be all sorts of like exploits and like random issues around pausing and checkpoints as well, and like all of those things. Like I just have a feeling that there's going to be stuff. Like we obviously do our best to think of these, but I'm sure there's going to be some stuff. So there might have to be some tweaks to the rules later on here. But as far as I know, you can do that. I believe. So I'm pretty sure what should happen is I think that for maps, the last checkpoint is like still in the map room.
Yeah.
Because there's no checkpoints in map. So I'm pretty sure what would happen is they'd go outside the map. They would be standing where the portals are. And if there's a portal available, they'll be able to go through that portal. And so if you moved the portal close to the boss fight before you went into it, because you can't use the portal while in the boss fight, then that would mean they'd be outside the boss fight. And so long as there's a way to get into the boss fight after the fact, it should work. So as far as I know, that should be how it works at the moment. But as I said, there might be individual rules that we can add or remove or whatever. Like there'll probably be tweaks to this, I'm sure.
Cool. Also, chat really wants me to correct you and say it's we call it swirly.
What? Okay.
Yeah,
For some reason, people around here call them seashelling.
Right.
I don't know where that. Maybe that's just in GGG slang for this.
That's funny.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
it apparently looks like a seashell.
That is really cool though. I'm obviously a little bit biased. Like I would love to run like a boss service where I'm like coming to rescue people. So that'd be very fun.
Well, as far as I know, that should be possible right now. But as I said, we might tweak the rules.
Cool. A little bit of like a more random cutesy question with how do you feel about like mini games like fishing or just like things to do that aren't necessarily like the core game?
I don't know. Like some people find that stuff fun. I guess I see the mini games in PoE as more like the different league mechanics. So like those are the things that we're probably more likely to add. But I know people have been wanting a fishing mini game for a long time. I guess look, we have boat support now, right? Like
I know.
from the hideout. so you never know, I guess.
Cool. Two-factor authentication, is that something we can see improvements of in PoE 2?
So this is one of those things where like it's trivially easy to add two-factor authentication. The hard part is all the support policy around what happens when people lose their second factor. And it's like okay, so like how do you verify someone who's lost the second factor? And then like that's a whole thing that's all drama around this. And then like you open yourself up to like all sorts of like support mistakes you could be making with that kind of stuff. And like it's notoriously like you have said this thing. And then people say, oh, you should just tell people that if they had two-factor, then if they do the second factor, they're just hosed. And it's like, well, you can say that now. You say that right up to the point you do lose your second factor, and then you're like, why is there no recovery process for this? You know what I mean? Like there has to be a recovery process. And then it's like, okay, so then how do we verify it? So then people are like, oh, you could like take government ID, and it's like, okay, well now there's like GDPR and privacy implications of this, and it's like it's just kind of an endless rabbit hole of like random policy and horrible stuff, and so like we should have it, right? Like absolutely we should 100% we should have two-factor. We just don't, and it's all because of that, like the tricky stuff around this. And like one day I just have no doubt we will implement this. It's just we just need to dig ourselves out of the hole of all the policy issues around support for this. That's the thing. And so what I will say though is just as a thing is that you can effectively outsource the two-factor on your account by using Steam if you want, because they have two-factor. And if Steam is the only login method on your account, then effectively you're just relying on their two-factor to be able to work. So you still have that option at least. Right. But yeah, we should add two-factor to the regular login system, and I want to add two-factor to the regular login system. It's just a question of getting time to sort through all the problems with it.
Speaking of regular login system, I can't remember if this was already confirmed, but do we still have both the standalone client and Steam?
Yep.
Okay.
We do.
Excellent. Another community question. So there is a limit of support gems, right? I can only use element control destruction on one gem. I can't use it on two gems.
Correct.
Is that rule still the same on my weapon swap? Let's say that I have a lightning ability in one weapon swap and a cold ability in the other, but on both of these main gems, I want to use control destruction.
So There's one per character. It doesn't relate to weapon swap. The thing that I just want to clarify around this is that like it's not like you've got slots that are just like one versus the other, right? Like when you look at your skill screen, they're all just on one screen. That you just get to enable or disable certain skills for being used by a certain weapon swap. So there's no as far as the question goes, like it is one for the entire character.
Okay. When we saw like videos, somebody had a video going through the settings and stuff like that, and I did not see lockstep or predictive being there. Is that still a thing?
I don't know what that is.
Why wouldn't it have been there? It could have been there. Okay, so
apparently it's only on the menu screen.
Oh yeah, because you can't change it while you're in your while you're in game. But yeah, it should be there. As far as I know.
Oh right, that's the thing I changed when I had internet issues.
With WSD, sorry, not predict. Okay, let me get this right. Okay, so there is a mode called hybrid. And I think that with WSD, predictive turns into hybrid, but I'm not sure whether or not they've actually like fiddled around with the interface of this. Hybrid is the mode that consoles use, but I don't think it tells you about it because I don't think there's a setting for it on consoles. Right. But effectively, what that is, it's like it's somewhere in between predictive and lockstep. I guess I could like, and effectively what it is that.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. Watching this makes me so fucking hyped for tomorrow, man.
With lockstep, when there's lag, internet lag, the whole game freezes. Like, and with predictive, when there's internet lag, the game does not freeze. Hybrid is a mode where we still use predictive networking, but we still freeze everything when the server hasn't replied to you, and that's just because it keeps everything sync a little bit better.
It's a little bit too much.
Prevents some of the issues.
I need to go back to Valheim and build walls for 2 hours.
Mode just works a bit better when you're using direct control WSD versus
4 hours
and stuff without causing too many desync issues. So that's
you know what, Matt. So you know all that zigzagging down that I did all of the last like 3 hours or whatever. So I finished that after stream just to realize I don't want it like this. I want to move it one block further in. So I'm doing the stair again. At least this time I have snap points enabled so I don't have to do the whole door shit. But I realized that if I do it on the outside of the thing I set up, I'm going to have issues in the corners. And when I fixed them the way I wanted to, it looked bad. So now I'm moving everything in, which is going to move the entire construction, not just the overhang, but everything. And it creates an issue at the tower. So that's great.
It's just a random detail there, but yeah, as far as I know, they still work, and they should be fine. What I worry about. And this is just random speculation on my part, is that like pretty much everyone in GGG plays in lockstep.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that like I worry that there won't be as much testing in predictive, and there could be like issues that happen in predictive that we're just not aware of because of the fact that like everyone's just playing in lockstep all the time. So it probably hasn't received the same testing as what what lockstep gets. So I would suggest to you play in lockstep if you can. Obviously, the issue is when your high latency is high. But that's the sort of stuff that will be that I'm sure we'll get more testing as we go into early access as well. But just random thing.
A question I just thought of was in PoE1, a thing that can happen is assets loading and being invisible if there were already loading ones. Is that a fixed thing in PoE2?
Unfortunately, that's not fixed, and this is something that really, really bothers me. But look, it's something that we're going to be like. I really want to fix that. I really, really want to fix it. Like it's the worst thing to me is that occurring. So we'll get to the point where that can occur. It's actually been made harder in PoE2 because of the fact the assets are larger in general. You know, like higher resolution textures and higher resolution like models and stuff like that. So. I don't think it will necessarily be worse or anything.
I'm not sure what he's answering right now.
It really sucks to me whenever a thing doesn't load. And so this is a thing that we will be working on and improving over time. I want to get to the point where it's just 100% the case that you never see an asset pop. Like that would be ideal.
Awesome.
Yeah. But we'll work towards that. But we aren't there yet.
Cool. A lot of people are asking about pre-download, being especially for people with slow connections, being able to start downloading the files before the 6th.
So the concern there would be what do you call it? Data mining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the concern with that.
My question is pre-download / data mining.
Yeah. I'll like we're definitely more vulnerable to data mining for PoE2 than we are in PoE1 usually, just because you know, like there's so much more new stuff, like just the whole campaign being something people haven't played.
Yeah.
You know, so like it's that would be the concern. I guess I do understand the why you'd want this though. So I guess I'll just have to talk to. I guess I just have to talk and see how we feel about it. Like, yeah, the concern is data mining though. That would be the reason not to do it. So yeah. That would be that's really the issue.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like that it hasn't been data mined yet. At least I love that.
Right. It will be interesting to see how fast the data mining occurs. Like, obviously, when you've got a thing like this, like a lot of people. Now, we do have some stuff to improve.
I don't understand the whole data mining thing, right? Like, just don't look at it, right? Like, if you don't want to see it, don't look at it. Do you know what separates humans from the animals? No. And I am here. I was just getting water. Want to do some keys? No. No, I don't. Why would I get back into... I mean, why would I get back into WoW? We're watching some PoE stuff. It's coming out tomorrow, bro. Tomorrow.
The like certain things will be harder to data mine than they were in the past, but on the other hand, there are some things the client just has to have, and if the client has to have it, then there's just no way to prevent data mining of it, because like you know it has to be on the client.
I'm not sure I want the answer because I feel like it's gonna be something that's not Twitch safe.
The client has to have the text of the mod, right?
If I know you
so
correct.
On some level, you've got to have that stuff. So yeah.
Cool, makes sense. Is rarity multiplicative or additive with map / monster rarity?
You mean so player rarity is player rarity is multiplicative with the map rarity, yeah. So that's still the case.
Right. A question about what leagues are, because obviously we are still going to have leagues in PoE2. What are they going to be based around? Right now they're being inspired by other games. Is that still going to be
surely it's Öresund, right?
I mean, that's always the case, right? We're always looking at other mechanics. I mean, ultimately it comes down to what is cool, and so that means that all we're really doing when we're looking at other games is like, is there something we can notice here that could inspire us to be cool? But like, it doesn't have to be another game. It could be a movie or like some random other thing. Like, you never know where the inspiration is going to come from. But that stuff can definitely happen. Just, you know,
Eastern
can we come up with a cool
Shores?
mechanic? That's all it comes down to.
Yeah. Is there any game off the top of your head that you're like,
Northeastern, I guess?
you really like want to find a way to like get this in PoE that like inspires you?
I don't know that I can name one right now. If like, it's like anything that would have happened like that, we probably already made a league for it.
Yeah.
So it would have to be something recent, and we haven't been talking about leagues in PoE2 yet, so we haven't had like a brainstorming session about that yet. So yeah, as I said, I don't think I can come up with one at the moment.
Awesome. And it's pretty much the final question here. I kind of tried to avoid open-ended questions, but is there any particular large engine changes with PoE2 that allows you to do something that you've always wanted to do in PoE1 but you weren't able to?
So most of the changes, like engine-wise, are actually on PoE1's engine, because we wanted to merge them so that we can make all the assets transfer.
Yeah.
Probably one of the largest changes that is different between PoE1 and 2 is the global elimination system. And what that kind of means is that so like any
Dude, I just thought about he just asked, is there any game that you want to put into PoE2, right? Like future league inspiration. Let's have it.
Question about what leagues are, because obviously we are still going to have leagues in PoE2. What are they going to be based around? Right now they're being inspired by other games. Is that still going to be the case?
Oh, I mean, that's always the case, right? We're always looking at other mechanics. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to what is cool, and so that means that all we're really doing when we're looking at other games is like, is there something we can notice here that
What?
could inspire us to be cool? But like, it doesn't have to be another game. It could be a movie or like just some random other thing. Like,
Dude, you are beyond cooked if you think Path of Exile 2 is gonna be dead on arrival. Bro, you wouldn't know a good game even if it fucking sucked your dick while you were playing it. Like, I don't know why you want to stick a pineapple up your ass and call it gaming, playing fucking WoW. You are beyond fucking... It'll take people more than a week to get fucking anywhere relevant in it. Like, you are so useless.
You never know where the inspiration's going to come from. But that stuff can definitely happen. Just, can we come up with a cool mechanic? That's all it comes down to.
Yeah. Is there any game off the top of your head that you're like, oh, do we really like want to find a way to like get this in PoE that like inspires you?
The thing, they had the map runners, right? I really wanted them to make it so that you could gear your map runners, right? Like, imagine instead of having like, I don't know how many map runners you got in the boat league, right? I don't care. But imagine if you get a map runner, and then depending on the tier of the map runner, you get X amount of points in the Paragon tree, and then you fucking build the character, you put gear on it, and you build it. Like they had that MOBA thing, right, where you played and you had things come and do. Imagine if you could make a team of your own characters or pick your friends' characters and have them run with you. So there was actual like things that were built rather than just a little machine that goes boop. That would be so cool.
I don't know that I can name
they
one
can put in
right now.
Garrisons of Warfront or
anything
early
that would have happened like that, we probably already made a league for it.
Legendaries
so
were
it would
good.
have to be something recent, and we haven't been talking about leagues in PoE 2 yet, so we haven't had like a brainstorm.
The only thing that will get me moderately, that is moderately exciting about WoW is that they've announced player housing. It's just too late. I don't care anymore. I'm out. I'm out of WoW. Like, I'm not interested. We're not back in, Soviet. We're playing PoE 2.
Session about that yet.
Look at this.
So yeah, as I said, I don't think I can come up with one at the moment.
Doesn't that look exciting?
And
Big Hammer Smash.
The final question here. I kind of tried to avoid open-ended questions, but is there any particular large engine changes with PoE 2 that allows you to do something that you've always wanted to do in PoE 1 but you weren't able to?
Oh, this is interesting.
So most of the changes, like engine-wise, are actually on PoE 1's engine because we wanted to merge them so that we can make all the assets transfer.
Yeah.
Probably one of the largest changes that is different between PoE 1 and 2 is the global elimination system. And what that kind of means is that so like any and this was like we had GI in PoE 1 as well, but it kind of works differently. So like effectively, the nice thing that you can do with a really good GI is that you can light objects without having to actually place lights in them. Like they just get lit by the glowing parts. Yeah. And so you just get a really nice like soft form of lighting from certain things. And
dude, even if Path of Exile 2 was only gonna last me a week, it's not. But even if, then I still have Valheim that I'm playing through, and on the 12th, there's Total War Warhammer 3 DLC that I want to play. Dude, you are so dumb. It hurts. I cannot believe it. Path of Exile Early Access is the top seller on Steam global. Like, it is wild shit. Streamer getting paid to market. What's that got to do with Steam? What, do you think the streamers are just buying up fucking copies of them, making new accounts and buying them? Like, what the fuck? There's no shot. It's like the game stocks. What, Steam? Steam. That is the furthest thing from scam, yeah? Dude, Big Daddy Gaben, he watches out for us. I sound like Alex Jones. You're calling Steam scamming? What the fuck? I can't believe that PoE 2 is coming out tomorrow. I have a key that I'm willing to give you, and you're going back to playing WoW. Are you raiding again? Or are you just gonna do +7s? Get carried maybe by Alex or whatever?
And certain areas can actually be lit entirely with the GI system, which is just really nice.
+8s.
Like, you get the ability
Wow.
to do some lighting that's just really quite different than what PoE 1 has been capable of.
Nice.
So yeah, like that's pretty cool. Trying to think if there's anything else that like we didn't actually port over, but not really. Like, 'cause we've tried to get everything as much as possible to be the same. Just for asset portability. So there's quite a lot of stuff to do with like one of the engine features we have is the ability to read this is like real technical stuff, but to read the material that's on the ground and use that in the shader of a thing that's sitting on top.
Yeah.
And that lets you do things like, for example, we use that in the the bear
Full
bear slam.
enchants.
When the bear does a slam,
Yeah.
like the actual ground.
I don't
that's
have any
under
more
the bear,
gold,
like the
so
chunks of rubble
I
that
can't
come up are,
afford
like,
enchants.
red from the ground that's actually there, so that
nice.
kind of like fits to the area. So that's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
And there's a few that's actually used quite a lot, like in more subtle ways. The bear is like really obvious because it's like big chunks of terrain that kind of come up. So that's another one.
That's very cool.
Wait, what did he say?
What's
They
another
make
one
a
that's, like,
bear come out of the
PoE2
ground?
only? I'm not sure. Yeah, like that's pretty cool. Trying to think if there's anything else that like lets you do things like, for example, we use that in the the bear slam.
Yep.
When the bear does a slam, like the actual ground that's under the bear, like the chunks of rubble that come up are like red from the ground that's actually there, so that
nice.
kind of like fits to the area. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, okay, that's
and,
cool.
there's a few that's actually used quite a lot, like in more subtle.
SAS swing. You wasting time with a dead. Dude, are you calling? No, I can't. There is no shot. You just said PoE 2 is a dead game, and you're going back to classic WoW streams.
Always the bear is like really obvious because it's like big chunks of terrain that kind of come up. So that's another one.
That's very cool.
What's another one that's like PoE 2 only? I'm not sure. As I said, most of the things get moved over. Like, I mean, look, one of the things that's gone on generally is that all of the
we later.
We've upgraded the part. So we used to use in PoE 1 originally a like CPU.
What, are you off work tomorrow, or you got a game all night, or 2 weeks?
For most of PoE 2's development, we've had this like GPU based particle system.
Dude, I'm gonna be playing PoE 1. PoE 1. I'm gonna be playing PoE 2 all the way up to the next D4 season, and I might even just say fuck that, I'm not playing those fucking whatever. Like, I have so much gaming content to consume right now, and you are welcome to join all of it, but you don't want to. Like, you could have joined me for Valheim, you can join me for Total War Warhammer 3, and you can join me for Path of Exile
system, and that just means that the particles can look way nicer, and like that is available in PoE 1, but it's just like all those assets were made like a long time ago, right? So they all use the old system. So like just what we're doing with particle systems now is just like way cooler, in my opinion. Like just like a lot of the graphics, like there's stuff like the particles will respond to like wind in the environment. So like if you have like explosions, you can have like wind events on the explosions that will cause like other particles that are around to just get pushed away and stuff like that. Like, there's just like little cool things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's just like there's nice little touches, but as I said, all that stuff is theoretically available in PoE 1. It's just it would require us like redoing a bunch of effects to actually take advantage of it. Yeah, probably some of the newer stuff in the leagues probably does, but most stuff isn't that. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that answers some of those questions.
No, that was great. Actually, I thought of another thing. Guild tabs. Guilds are not transferring over to PoE 2. What about guild slash tabs?
So because of the fact the guild isn't, it means the stash tabs aren't
he
either.
he
And that's
is
kind of
stupid,
unfortunate
Matt.
because I would want that to happen. But in order to, the guilds just aren't integrated across both games. So therefore, because one guild owns the tab, that guild isn't across, like therefore the tabs are where they are. And as I said, that's really not a like policy decision. It's just a kind of technical decision. So I suppose in order to fix that, we'd have to merge the guilds of PoE 1 and 2, and like I wouldn't even be against that idea. It's just requires more work than what we have time to do, unfortunately.
So the answer is
to be able to make something
basically
happen.
we will have to buy the stash tabs again, right?
You will for that, yes, unfortunately. But as I said, I just wish that wasn't the case, but it just is, unfortunately, just due to the way that we couldn't get the guilds merged.
No, that's fine. Sarah, is PoE Mobile still
They're
being
turning
worked
the
on?
frogs gay.
It's not being worked on right now. Like we put it on hold when we like as we realized that we needed the resources, and effectively the people who were working on that, they then were the ones who then were taking over the console interface for PoE 2. So what that meant was that we suddenly had a team that could actually like work on all that stuff and like do all the work that we needed to do for console. So the intention would be that when we get to the point of like feeling comfortable with like PoE 2 is fine, like all the interface stuff is like all resolved, like we're out of early access, we're kind of like everything's good, then would be keen to restart the console version, the mobile version again. But for the time being, we're not working on it, and we'll just have to get to the point where like feel okay, the console version of PoE 2 is like is good enough that we can get some of the resources and move them over again.
Awesome. I don't know if the last one's like a question. I just want to throw my hat in the oh my god, please let us mute other player sounds. I hate the goblin troops. I want to throw my hat in that.
Okay.
So much.
Understood. Yeah, understood. I'll talk to them about it.
Awesome. That was pretty much all the questions I had. Like, thank you so much. Like, we are a few days out for launch and you're taking time to do this. We all the community super appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we're very excited to play PoE 2 when it comes out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for, giving me a chance to talk to you guys again. It's always fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, for everybody watching on both YouTube and Twitch,
all right.
Try to die. Less than
See you later,
the
guys.
servers.
Okay, this I'm excited. This is gonna be great, man. Anybody who knows what a great game is, so not Zoe, is excited for PoE. I don't understand how he isn't. So what do we have? We have like 30 minutes, and this is over an hour. Did they? Oh, I don't want to open the tweeter on the page that's streaming. Yeah, exactly. The first picture is some mature scenes from a movie, and somebody is trying to roll down a pants zipper, going, "Can I have it now?" And the next one is, holy shit! What the hell? Can I just have... What is this? No, just give me following. Where is Path of Exile? I'll just have to search for it. See if they release something we can look at. No. Oh, they put out the like songstress thing. Nah, they didn't. I do want to look at the so they have some drops enabled that's coming out tomorrow. The whole internet's on fire for PoE 2? Yeah, I mean, if you're not excited for PoE 2, I don't know what you're doing. So they have these Twitch drops, so let's see what we're getting. Oh, Jesus. So wherever you use the flash, you get that bolt. And you get a helmet attachment. Oh, that one's pretty cool. And that's the pet for 2 subs. I might have to get that one. That one's fucking dope. The fuck? Okay, so you put a flask and that is kind of cool, actually. That one goes well with that paladin thing they were selling, doesn't it? Dude, that thing's so stupid. I think I'm getting that one. I do think I'm getting that one. The fuck? That is pretty good. That is pretty good. I guess oh, he has this one? Path of Exile 2 will shock the world, but that's not an interview. Okay, so the birthplace to Exile success. Ethical live service? Jesus. I mean, we'll give it a go. See if it's interesting. Like,
wouldn't it be great to know what the secret is behind having a successful live service game so we could share it with the world? One of the things that I've always...
I don't really care about your intro, sorry.
Thank you. Enjoy. True. So you're one of the founders of Grinding Gear Games. What led you guys to make Path of Exile, and did you guys think you would make it this far?
So I actually was one of the founders straight out of university.
Okay.
I was friends with Chris, who, you know, he was basically my best friend through university. And we kind of, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a game developer from the point I was like 10 years old, right? Like I was doing game development like as a hobby right from that point. So it really wasn't a question of like, was I going to be a game developer? It was a question of like, how is that going to happen? And Chris, he was actually the one who sort of suggested, look, what we need to be doing is making a sequel to Diablo 2. That was basically his view on things. And I obviously loved Diablo 2 as well.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't like, at the time when he was suggesting this, I wasn't still a player of it. You know what I mean? Like I'd played it a huge amount earlier, but Chris was still deep in Diablo 2 and obviously loved the game. But he just made a really good case for the fact that, you know what, like there hasn't been a game that got the whole formula right for a really long time. Like there was no evidence at the time that Blizzard was making it, right? Like we just had no idea.
Yeah, there was like a 10-year lull or something, right?
Yeah, it was that because I mean, that's a whole thing. But effectively, they hadn't announced anything. You know, like as far as we were concerned, it was just like here's just a game that was still selling. By the way, like people were still selling physical copies of Diablo 2.
Yep.
Like it might have been like 10 years later or something like that. There was still game was still selling like hotcakes. And it's like okay.
It's still good today.
Yeah.
That was when Blizzard made bangers.
There were you and so you had a game and it's like okay, no.
Some people are still clinging to it. If you're still here,
still selling and still obviously people, you know, there's still a huge amount of demand for the stuff. Why the hell, you know, like are we not the ones doing this? So yeah, I mean, basically we you know, we decided, hey, we'll just get started. And I was doing a lot of hobby game development. Chris had done a little bit of that, but you know, he was actually doing some security stuff. And we were just like, okay, like, well, let's just do it then. So yeah, we just started writing code and getting things done. And you know, we went a long way. And you know, I remember at the very beginning, because like we actually did like think, okay, well, what is the what would success look like? For doing this, like what, like if we're going to do this, like what would we have to actually achieve? And the thing that we thought that we needed to achieve was effectively 10,000 concurrent players. That was the amount that we sort of worked out that if we had that, the amount of money that we would be making would be able to support the studio, and everything would be okay. So that was kind of our like what we were trying to do. So anything beyond that point, as far as we were concerned, was just gravy. You know what I mean? Like everything beyond that was great. So yeah, I mean, we pretty much achieved that like right from the start. Like we as soon as we had our closed beta, like, you know, things were going well and the company just did really well. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like that was kind of our thing. Like we never really at the time sort of thought that we weren't thinking like we had to be the biggest game ever. We were just like, we can be sustainable if we have 10,000 concurrent users. So that's the audience we need to attract. If we can do that, then we're good. And so that was kind of our thinking. I think the sort of the grander scale is something that yeah, it wasn't really in our mind.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously Path of Exile has been a bit of a standout success, especially like with free-to-play games, ARPG specifically. I still think there's not a lot of competition out there. Even you guys saw an opportunity, and I mean, we've had a couple of games come out over the last few years, but nothing in the same vein. What do you guys attribute to the game's longevity and its success?
So when we started, I guess what we saw was there were kind of like 5 pillars to make a good action RPG. Like and these are the things that we thought, okay, like there are people who have some of these, but there's no other game that has all of them except for Diablo 2. So the first one would be, well, I mean, in no particular order, you've got random level generation.
Yep.
For longevity, you just need to have it. You need to have it. I mean, you need to do it well. Because if you don't have that, I mean, look, things are just going to get boring very quickly. You've just played through the same thing 1,000 times. I mean, obviously, even with random level generation, that can still happen, but it takes a lot longer. The next thing is a secure online economy. So effectively, you have to have the ability to trade items, and it has to be secure in the sense that nobody can dupe them. There's no cheats. There's nothing like that. Like, that's really important for that long-term feeling because it makes the stuff that you find feel like it has value. Which I think is very important for the long term. The next one is that you have to have a random item system. So, and what I mean by that, what I mean is like the item system has to have elements of chance, and it has to be that anything you kill could be the thing that could drop the next amazing thing that you need to find. So, in practice, since we launched, we have also added more deterministic things
those
as well,
slot machines.
I think do have a place, but you certainly need like it needs to be that just killing any random monster could be the one that drops like the amazing item. Like you still need that feeling all the time. Otherwise, you know, you like if you don't have that, then what happens is that you see then you finish a grind, and then the next giant grind is like stretching out ahead of you. And if you don't think you're going to get any rewardingness until the point where you finish that, that's a good moment that you might choose to quit. So that's actually one of those things that is really important as well.
Yeah.
The next one is you need action combat. And at the time, the reason why what we were talking about there is as opposed to the kind of more MMO style combat that you had back then, which was like very like, you know, like just everything's on cooldown, like you have a million abilities and it's just kind of like one thing after another. That sort of cooldown rotation, like sort of slower paced combat that you had from the MMOs at the time. And was that all of them, or did I say
I don't
4?
think WoW is slow paced.
Where was I?
Just because you have cooldowns.
This one?
Maybe, I think so.
No, right. So there was the other one. The other one was a deep
You said the loot
system
and
of
the
character
action
customization.
combat and the trading.
Yeah. So a deep system of character customization. So effectively, you need enough depth in the way that you build your characters to make it so that you're willing to play through the same character. So not through the same character, through the game again, but with a different build, so that can still be interesting to you. And that was something that D2 didn't really have as much. But one thing D2 did have was the concept of the ladder reset, which is effectively like the fresh economic start. And that concept was ultra important because, once again, if you're doing ladder resets, then you need to, you know, have the ability for your character to be different every time. There needs to be lots of build variety and things that you can do so that you feel like you're having a different experience each time as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Those are kind of the like 5 pillars that we had. And I think that really like at this point, the one that I think a lot of companies still don't have, the ones that I think that companies still often don't do, one of them is they're really afraid to do full economic resets where there's absolutely zero progress that carries on between the leagues. That's something that, so a lot of companies are doing seasonal content now, but the thing that after they do the first one that players will always say is, oh, we want you to have some way to skip the campaign, we want to have some way to like, you know, to blah, 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 keep, right? They're going to say that, right? But I think it's actually ultimately long-term very harmful because it means that like when you have a full economic reset, it means that new players can join your game and not feel like they're behind everyone. Like they're behind everyone in terms of knowledge, but they're not behind everyone in terms of like, you know, physically speaking, everyone who starts a Path of Exile league is on the same playing field, apart from what they know about the game. So I think that's super important. So that's one that a lot of companies still aren't doing.
Yeah,
the other
that
one
makes
as
sense.
well that a lot of companies don't do is item trade.
But the caveat to that is if you implement something that is just ass the second time, then if it's really good content the first time, I mean, but it isn't the second, then I don't see why not. But it is mostly referring to stuff like for D4, right? Like the Altars of Lilith, fuck that. but that was just a shit system to begin with. So now we can skip the campaign in D4. I don't know if that would be better. Good night, Matt. Sleep tight. Would it be better if you had to play the campaign every time? There are certainly some things, like getting the Astaroth fight again would be nice. That's a good fight. It's kind of wild. Some of the best fights in D4, you only fight once and then never again. It wasn't until like season 2 that they added in Duriel. And it wasn't until like season 4 they added in Andariel. And Astaroth is still missing. And the new Mephisto fight is nowhere to be found. It's so weird that some of the best content is just only used once and never again. But we have fucking Tomb Lord in 80 dungeons, yeah?
With no binding of items, and so that really keeps the value. And a lot of companies are very afraid to do that. You know, like it's one of those things I think is ultra important. Like it leads to so many problems, and people look at the problems and they assume that those problems are worse than the benefit. And I think that's partly because the benefit is a little bit more intangible. Like it's harder to kind of appreciate the value that players feel, like because it's kind of, you know, like it doesn't even kind of matter initially, and it's like one of those longer term kind of like concerns. But I think that is really valuable, and it's something that I wish more games would do.
I'm actually really happy you said something about that, because I think it's one of the things where, like, I look at you guys. I also I play Warframe. That's one of my big games, right? And you guys are very similar in that, with like being able to trade loot and whatnot. So many games stay away from that, and I think it adds so much more value, not only to what the player finds in the game, but like. I don't really know how to put my finger on it exactly, but I think it actually does have something to do with those concurrent player numbers, and it's something that brings players back, because they know, no matter what, when they're playing the game, that, you know, there's really nothing keeping them from reaching the rest of the players that might be ahead of them.
Right.
So yeah, that's cool. So where was I at? So you guys already have a successful game with PoE. You guys could have just visually updated it and continued to grow it. Why did you guys choose to make a second game, making PoE 2? And also, why did you choose to support both?
So it's funny because we kind of creeped towards it in a strange way. The very initially,
PoE 1's gonna die.
The plan literally was, okay, we need to visually update Path of Exile 1.
As soon as PoE 2 gets a little bit of tracking, PoE 1's gonna die.
That was the big problem at the time. And effectively, what it is that the rigs for the for the player characters, that's like one of the first things that you'd need to make in a game, right? Because everything, like all the character animations and all the skills, but also all the armors need to be attached to them and all that stuff. Like all that stuff kind of goes on top of that. So once you've done that, it's something that you really can't change without redoing, you know, everything related to characters. And we were like, okay. These rigs are from 2006. The people who made them at the time were very inexperienced. Like, you know, we didn't know what we were doing. We also, every player character had its own rig, which means that we were doing 7 times the amount of work to support everything that we should have needed to do. And just the overall, there were just so many problems with them. So like, okay, in order to make the graphics of PoE 1 better, we're going to have to change these rigs. So we make new rigs, and we're like, okay, now we're going to have to re-rig all the armors. But if instead of re-rigging armors, like, surely we should visually update the armors instead of just re-rigging the old ones, right? Because like, obviously, you know, it's like, well, you know, we're doing much work anyway. We might as well just create new items because, you know, those will look better and everything will be better than that. And, you know, we have to make new animations for everything. So rather than, you know, like remaking old skills, I mean, effectively we might as well be making new ones, right? That are cooler and better. So effectively, you know, it started out there. And at some point we're like, okay, but like the graphics of the starting areas in PoE 1, you know, we like the first act is like a particularly ugly. We really should like make a new act 1, you know, like you know, so to make that look better as well, because, you know, like by the time you've got these great looking characters, but then they're in old environments, like that looks bad. So we really should update that as well. So effectively, like we just kept on like more and more things kind of like got added as like, you know, and effectively
it just turned into a new game.
Yeah, sort of did like that. And so when we even announced Path of Exile 2, we announced it as like, okay, we're going to have 2 campaigns, because at that point we decided to redo the whole campaign. We're going to have 2 campaigns, but it's going to have a shared end game, so that it's like effectively still the same game. And that was kind of what we announced initially in 2019, because at that point we were still in the mindset of like, we're effectively just, this is effectively just a giant expansion to Path of Exile that we're making here. And then even later than that, then at some point, the point when it really split into 2 games was the point when I started wanting to make some much more serious changes to gameplay feel and to balance and so on. I don't think those necessarily were like it came from a specific philosophy that differed from PoE1 or anything. It was just that like, in order to make these skills feel good, I feel like I need to make these changes kind of thing. And at some point, we started getting a lot of like...
This shit is cool and all, but it's just kind of not going to make me learn anything for PoE2. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to call it here. I had this planned. We went through this. I was hoping we could do both, but we couldn't. So yeah, I'm just gonna call it, and I'll do an extra stream tomorrow for the PoE2 launch. So these 10 minutes earlier I call it tonight, we will get in a whole additional stream tomorrow, and it's probably gonna be 4 or 5 hours of me just, well, dying, I guess. I'll start hardcore. Let's see how long we last. Because if it just goes softcore, why not, right? I might lose some currency, but I don't know. It'll be good, I think. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hop off. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I'll see you tomorrow for PoE2 launch. It's gonna be hype. If nothing else, you can come and get your drops, right? But yeah, I am gonna hop off. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you're all excited for PoE2. Good night, guys.